Chapter 1040. Initially, Su Zimo planned to enter a stalemate with Di'in and exhaust him. Once Creation Qinglian broke free from the suppression of the Chaos Essence Bell and Dragon battling Truncheon, he would be able to regain the upper hand with her. However, the current situation was extremely dangerous. Di'in would not give him the chance at all. Su Zimo's gaze was cold. However, there seemed to be two balls of flames burning in his eyes. Swoosh! Su Zimo changed hand seals repeatedly and three balls of flames appeared beside him. One was scarlet, one was golden and one was black. Immortal Dao Fire, Buddhist Dao Fire and Fiend Dao Fire. After inheriting half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky's Fiend cultivation technique, apart from many Fiend cultivation techniques, Su Zimo even deduced a black Fiend Dao Fire. The Samadhi Dao Fire was the strongest dharmic art in the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. After Su Zimo redefined it, the Samadhi Dao Fire underwent a transformation, and its might was even more terrifying and shocking. Back at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, the void reversion of Hellfire Hall was burned to ashes by Su Zimo's Dvyadi Dao Fire. At that time, Su Zimo was only at the nascent soul realm and there were only two balls of flames for that dharmic art. Now that Su Zimo was at the void reversion realm, the flames around him had already evolved into three balls. The true Samadhi Dao Fire. Not bad, although Di'in did not recognize the origin of the Samadhi Dao Fire. He had a powerful cultivation and sharp eyes. Before long, he sensed that the three balls of flames were extraordinary. Indeed, your flame dharmic art can defend against my great chaos essence palm, Di'in smirked coldly. However, it's only able to defend against it for a moment. You can't release this dharmic art continuously, but my great chaos essence palm can. Di'in was not the only one. Even Su Zimo had the same judgment. Although his Samadhi Dao Fire had already been reborn, his cultivation was only at early stage void reversion. With that dharmic art alone perhaps, he could only fight to a draw against the great chaos essence palm that fused his body, blood chi and dharmic powers. If he wanted to truly threaten Di'in, he had to raise the power of that dharmic art by another level. Let's talk about it after you can block this Samadhi Dao Fire, Su Zimo said coldly as he pointed forward. The three balls of flames that were originally revolving around him suddenly floated towards Di'in. Before they could even get close, the three balls of flames collided with one another. Their might soared, and the entire void was already distorted and blurred from the heat. Even the cultivators watching from afar could feel a heat wave surging towards them, let alone Di'in who was opposite them. What a terrifying spell. Destroy! Di'in's gaze was like a torch and he was oblivious to it. He turned the great chaos essence palm and suppressed the Samadhi Dao Fire. Just as the great chaos essence palm and the Samadhi Dao Fire were about to collide, Su Zimo's glabella flickered and a red light burst forth, emitting a scorching aura. Primordial Spirit Flame. The fourth flame arrived instantly and injected into the Samadhi Dao Fire. The Samadhi Dao Fire instantly evolved into the Kacharati Dao Fire. According to Su Zimo's cultivation, the power of this dharmic art would multiply with every additional Samadhi Dao Fire. Now that the Samadhi Dao Fire had evolved into the Kacharati Dao Fire, its power had increased exponentially, and its nature had changed completely. Lin Xuanji was originally sitting on the broken wall at the side to watch the battle. The aftershock of the collision between Su Zimo and Di'in was extremely threatening to other cultivators. However, it was nothing to him. The reason why he did not go too far was because he was worried about Su Zimo. In my opinion, Araki Takashi won't be able to live for long. Many cultivators stood at the periphery and looked at the human-shaped fireball in the center of the battlefield from afar with conflicted expressions as they discussed fervently. Su Zimo released his essence spirit fire and his essence spirit withered instantly. The consecutive battles had already exhausted his essence spirit to its limits. If the Kacharati Dao Fire could not turn the tide, he would not have any trump cards left. Looking at Di'in who was struggling not far away, Su Zimo's expression was cold and there was no pity in his eyes. He recalled Ji Chengtian who was severely injured and hunted down by Di'in for the past 100 years and little Fatty who narrowly escaped death. He recalled the scene of Di'in piercing Solitary Cloud's chest 20 days ago. He recalled how Solitary Cloud was still lying in his storage bag with his life hanging by a thread. The rage in Su Zimo's heart burned even more fiercely. He did not care about Di Yin's identity or how powerful his backing was. He was not going to give Di Yin any more chances today. This was the moment to kill Di Yin. Chapter 1041. In a flash, Su Zimo closed in on Di Yin rapidly. Although the Kachirati Dao fire was strong and had a high temperature that could incinerate everything, it did not harm Su Zimo at all. Now that he was close, Su Zimo could clearly see through the flames that Di Yin's clothes were already reduced to ashes. Under the burning of the Kachirati Dao fire, his flesh had already split open and emitted a wave of pungent burnt smell. Even so, against the suppression of his powerful blood chi and dermic powers, the Kachirati Dao fire merely burned his flesh and did not penetrate his bones and organs. What a frightening physique and bloodline! If he did not have the Kachirati Dao fire, Su Zimo would not have any chance of winning if this continued. But now the situation was reversed. Su Zimo's gaze intensified with a murderous aura. Extending his gigantic palm, he clenched it into a fist and punched Di Yin's chest viciously. Roar! Even though he was engulfed in flames, Di Yin could still sense that someone was attacking him and he roared. His throat was already filled with smoke and dust. That roar was hoarse and ear-piercing as well. Di Yin swung his arm and welcomed Su Zimo's fist. His spirit consciousness could not detect anything at all and his eyes were already blinded. His counterattack was purely based on his powerful combat talent and instincts. Di Yin is indeed a monster incarnate of the current era. He's truly strong to be able to retaliate and not die despite being burned to such an extent. That's right. If not for Su Zimo, Di Yin would definitely be in existence like the ancient emperors in the future. Many cultivators were filled with emotions when they saw that. Bang! Su Zimo dodged Di Yin's palm and punched him in the chest. Di Yin was burned to such an extent, blinded and crippled. For Su Zimo, who was terrifying in melee combat, it was way too easy for him to dodge Di Yin's attack. This punch is for Chen. Su Zimo's voice passed through the flames and sounded in Di Yin's ears with a cold killing intent. Di Yin spat out a mouthful of blood. Before they could scatter into the void, they were instantly burned into nothingness by the Kachirati Dao fire. Di Yin's chest caved in deeply with a fist imprint. Cracks had already appeared on his sternum from this punch. This punch is for little fatty. Taking a step forward, Su Zimo punched out once more, imitating the punch from earlier. Bang! Another punch landed heavily on Di Yin's chest. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. A large part of his chest caved in. Countless ribs shattered and pierced into his internal organs. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood and foamed at the mouth. The Kachirati Dao fire had not been able to break through his physical defenses and seep into his bones and organs. However, after 2 consecutive punches, the raging flames had already followed the wound on his chest and burned towards his internal organs. Di Yin staggered and his body swayed as he retreated unconsciously. Su Zimo walked towards Di Yin and raised his fist again. This punch is for Solitary Cloud. Su Zimo strode forth with the plow heaven stride and landed heavily in front of Di Yin. Twisting his waist, he gathered all his strength and punched Di Yin's already caved-in chest. Poof! Di Yin spat out a mouthful of blood from his chest. It was penetrated by Su Zimo's 3 punches. Right now, his outcome was no different from Solitary Cloud's. However, his physique was strong and his life force was way too exuberant. Even though he was severely injured, he could still stand on the spot. Su Zimo glared at Di Yin, who was in the flames, with a cold gaze and said slowly, "I'll send you on your way with this final attack." Su Zimo extended his arm that seemed weak like the trunk of a divine elephant and swung it towards Di Yin's head. Piak! Su Zimo's palm landed on Di Yin's head and punched viciously. Crack! 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 Under countless gazes, Di Yin's head spun a few times around his neck and was almost twisted off entirely. Right then a beam of light surged into the skies. His essence spirit had left his body. Even under the burning of the Kachirati Dao fire, Di Yin still chose to leave his body with his essence spirit. His essence spirit was wrapped in a dermic robe that shone with rays of light. It was an essence spirit dermic weapon. After Di Yin's essence spirit broke through the flames, the dermic robe on his body could not withstand the burning of the Kachirati Dao fire, and was ignited in the blink of an eye. His essence spirit dermic weapon was crippled. He tossed the dermic robe away hurriedly and his essence spirit escaped. You're still trying to escape? Sneering coldly, Su Zimo rose from the ground and let out a loud roar. Kill! The sound domain's secret skill Thunderclap Kill was released. Di Yin's essence spirit shuddered. Su Zimo had already caught up from behind and reached out with a gigantic palm, capturing Di Yin's essence spirit in his palm. Fufufu. Despite knowing that he was going to die, Di Yin laughed instead. Araki Takashi, even if you kill me, you won't live for long. You've killed so many titular disciples in this Dao inheritance ground and you still want to live? Su Zimo's expression was calm and he was unmoved as he said indifferently, it's fine. Even if I die, I'll kill you first. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo thought about it and said, it'll be too easy on you if I kill you directly. I'm very curious about what opportunities you've obtained. I'll take all your opportunities. With that said, a ball of light appeared in Su Zimo's palm. The ball of light was filled with black fiend chi that locked Di Yin's essence spirit within like chains. What are you doing? Finally, Di Yin felt a hint of fear. I'm searching your soul, of course. Su Zimo said coldly and channeled his soul-searching art without hesitation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Images flashed through Su Zimo's mind one after another. Di Yin's cultivation speed was extremely fast. Su Zimo did not pause at all for the images of chi condensation and foundation establishment. He flashed past them and looked behind. He wanted to obtain top-tier secret skills such as the Great Chaos Essence Palm and Limitless Saber. The scene changed. In a secret chamber, a middle-aged man sat cross-legged. He looked like he was only 34 years old, but his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of time. No one knew how long he had lived. Di Yin knelt obediently in front of the middle-aged man. Today, I'll impart to you the strongest secret skill of Chaos Essence Sect, the Great Chaos Essence Palm, the middle-aged man said slowly. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he listened intently. All of a sudden, the middle-aged man who was initially sitting on the cushion looked at the void beside him with killing intent in his eyes. Who is it? How dare you spy on my imparting of the Tao? Boom! Su Zimo's mind shuddered and the soul-searching art stopped instantly. Instantly, he woke up and unknowingly, he was drenched in sweat. Su Zimo had a grim expression and frowned, his eyes filled with bewilderment. The soul-searching art was used to search Di Yin's memories. In other words, those memories were things that had already happened and were fixed. However, the middle-aged man who imparted the Tao to Di Yin in those memories was able to awaken and discover his existence. That was way too terrifying. This method had already exceeded Su Zimo's understanding, and was even stranger than the soul-searching art. This might have already reached the level of a divine power. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and suppressed the distracting thoughts in his mind for the time being. He looked at Di Yin's essence spirit in the ball of light with a cold expression. No matter what, Di Yin was dead for sure. Su Zimo closed his palms. Poof! Di Yin's essence spirit was crushed. Tao being chaos essence, Di Yin was dead. Chapter 1042. The battlefield was bleak. Di Yin's corpse lay quietly on the ruins, long devoid of life. The cultivators looked at the corpse and many of them had their mouths agape, unable to recover from their shock. Before this, who would have thought that Tao being chaos essence, Di Yin would die here? Up till this point of his cultivation, Di Yin was only more than 200 years old. His combat achievements were dazzling, and he had even obtained the inheritance of the human emperor. He was hailed as the #1 monster incarnate of Chaos Essence Sect, and even Tianhuang mainland. He had once obtained the #1 of the phenomenon ranking. Killing someone above his level was something that Di Yin had done countless times. Even among the titular disciples, no one was willing to go against him. However, such a monstrous genius had also perished today. In this generation, not only did Chaos Essence Sect produce Di Yin, there was also Yi Tiancheng. They were known as the Chaos Essence Twin Paragons. Almost everyone thought that with those two paragons, Chaos Essence Sect would become the leader of the immortal sects before long. Initially, the Chigaramon Patriarch wanted to sacrifice Lung Ro to become Tao companions with Yi Tiancheng precisely because he had taken a fancy to Chaos Essence Sect's potential. But now the Chaos Essence Twin Paragons were a thing of the past. Within a year, those two paragons died one after another. Both of them were killed by a single person. Throughout history there had been countless paragons. However, there were only a few that could truly reach the end and stand at the peak of Tianhuang mainland. Every paragon would encounter countless dangers in their growth. If they died prematurely, they would be forgotten before long, and the traces left behind would be washed away by the river of time. By the time Dao being Chaos Essence Diyin died, a total of 8 titular disciples had already died here. The Dao inheritance ground had become the burial ground of this generation's titular disciples. In the ruins, a green-robed figure stood beside Diyin's corpse. His figure was not considered strong and was even a little thin. His features were rather delicate as well. However, no one looked down on him. Araki Takashi. To rise up by stepping on the corpses of 8 titular disciples, there was probably no monster incarnate in history who had such methods and boldness. Araki Takashi established the Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. The crowd recalled the deafening words that sounded in the Tao inheritance ground previously. Perhaps, as long as this person did not die, he could really impart martial arts to all living beings and change the fate of the entire Tianhuang region. Perhaps planet Tianhuang would once again usher in a golden era that was not inferior to the ancient era. The thought crossed the minds of many cultivators. "How are you? Are you okay?" Lin Xuanji ran over. When he saw Su Zimo standing there silently, he reached out and waved his palm in front of the latter's face. Su Zimo shook his head. The soul-searching technique was interrupted and terminated. He also failed to obtain the Great Chaos Palm and other secret techniques. Of course, this didn't matter. However, when he recalled the terrifying gaze of the middle-aged man during the soul-searching process, his heart began to throb with fear. He couldn't explain it clearly. It was like a sudden impulse. He had a feeling that a great disaster was about to befall him. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo suppressed that feeling for the time being and retracted the creation Qinglian. Pausing for a moment, he pondered for a moment. As though he had thought of something, he took out the creation Qinglian from his consciousness and held it in his palm. Now that Diyin was dead, the 2 connate dermic weapons, the Chaos Essence Bell and Dragon Battling Truncheon, became ownerless items. Su Zimo put away the 2 connate dermic weapons in Diyin's storage bag. "You've really struck it rich this time round." Lin Xuanji secretly gave him a thumbs up. "Not only did you survive the calamity, you even obtained so many treasures. Notwithstanding the storage bags of the titular disciples, their destiny dermic weapons alone were extraordinary. Brother Lin, I can't thank you enough with words. I'll definitely remember your kindness." Su Zimo cupped his fists and said solemnly. Lin Xuanji waved it off and chuckled. "What kind of relationship do we have? We were people who cleared the dragon pool together back then." The 2 of them exchanged glances and smiled. Only the 2 of them understood that sentence. Back then, in order to avoid the pursuit of the Palace Lord of Bloodcrow Palace, Su Zimo accidentally barged into the Dragonbone Valley by chance and got to know Lin Xuanji. "Brother Su, is there something on your mind?" Lin Xuanji was meticulous and could not help but ask when he saw the worry on Su Zimo's face. Su Zimo sighed gently. "I have to meet someone." "Who?" Lin Xuanji asked. Su Zimo replied, "The pure maiden of the fiend sections." The pure maiden of the fiend sex was Demoness Ji. "It's her?" Lin Xuanji raised his brow and revealed a look of relief. "She sacrificed herself as a tripod. You should go and take a look at her." "You know about tripods?" Su Zimo was slightly surprised. "I know a little," Lin Xuanji said. "Normal tripods are usually used by cultivators of the unorthodox path, who use young girls as tripods to absorbing energy for cultivation. However, the tripods of the fiend sex pure maiden sect are completely different. According to what I know, among the 7 fiend sects, Cloud Rain sect pursues the Tao of indulgence. There's no etiquette between men and women, and they return to nature with yin and yang intertwining. There's only one rule: no emotions. However, Pure Maiden sect is the exact opposite and pursues the Tao of eliminating desires. Every single generation of Pure Maiden can choose a man to be their tripod. Although they can fall in love with the man, they must not have any desires. With the help of tripods, the Pure Maiden of the Fiend sex sharpens her Tao heart continuously to increase her cultivation. The Pure Maiden of the Fiend sex can harm anyone in the world, but she cannot harm her own tripod. Furthermore, once she has any desires for the tripod, her powers will dissipate. If we use the sacrificial method, Su Nu's power will be transferred to the human cauldron. After saying that, Lin Xuanji lamented, the pure maiden of this generation of the fiend sex is probably destroyed. The price is way too great. In the battle 20 days ago, Demoness Ji sacrificed herself and Su Zimo's body recovered. His dermic power surged and he was able to escape the encirclement of the 5 titular disciples. As for herself, her Tao was destroyed and she was reduced to a mortal because of that. Even though her Tao heart was recognized by a mighty figure of pure maiden sect, it was useless. Su Zimo's eyes were filled with guilt and self-blame. Initially, he knew nothing about all of this. It was only through the inheritance of half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky that he understood the meaning of pure maiden sex tripod. Unfortunately, even if he knew, it was already too late. To think that the stubbornness of the fiend sex would reach such an extent. Although it was easy to say that one had no desires, it was extremely difficult. The deeper one's emotions were, the harder it was to restrain their desires. That went against the laws of nature. No matter what, I have to find her. Su Zimo said, this is the Tao inheritance ground and cultivators are everywhere. She'll definitely be in danger after losing her powers. Let's go. I'll accompany you to take a look. Lin Xuanji patted Su Zimo on the shoulder and consoled. Don't worry, as long as she's still in the inheritance of the Demoness Stone statue, nothing will happen to her. The two of them did not say much and disappeared in a flash. Chapter 1043. The Tao inheritance ground was not considered big. Su Zimo treated his wound simply and sped along with Lin Xuanji, arriving at the location of the Demoness Stone statue before long. The moment he arrived, Su Zimo's expression changed. The Demoness Stone statue that was initially erected here had already collapsed, and its fragments were scattered all over the ground. Demoness Ji had already disappeared. He was a step too late. Su Zimo's expression was terrible. The inheritance stone statues left behind by conjoint body mighty figures contained the power of the mighty figure, and were indestructible. It was impossible for anyone to shake them during the inheritance process. The most likely possibility was that someone shattered the Demoness Stone statue after the inheritance and stole Demoness Ji away. Don't worry, Lin Xuanji scanned the surroundings and said in a deep voice, there are no signs of fighting or bloodstains at the scene. Tao being pure maiden should be fine. Let's search the vicinity first. The two of them split up to search. Su Zimo's essence spirit was greatly exhausted from the consecutive battles. However, he still tried his best to spread his spirit consciousness and search carefully. Before long, Su Zimo stopped in his tracks and shuddered. Not far ahead, a young girl in pink was walking towards him. She had a graceful figure and light footsteps. Her bright eyes were smiling and she exuded an enchanting aura that caused one's heart to ripple. Who else could that girl be other than Demoness Ji? When he saw that Demoness Ji was fine, Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief and could not help but laugh. Looking at Su Zimo, who was not far away, Demoness Ji smiled happily as well with a tender look in her eyes. Su Zimo walked forward. When he was close, he realized that Demoness Ji's cultivation had not decreased at all. She was still at early stage void reversion. How did you? Su Zimo was puzzled but did not know how to ask. Demoness Ji saw through Su Zimo's confusion right away and smiled. You want to ask why my cultivation is still present and why I didn't turn into a mortal because of the sacrifice? Su Zimo nodded. Originally, because of the sacrifice of the human cauldron, I lost all my power. Demoness Ji said, however, it was a blessing in disguise and triggered the inheritance of the pure maiden stone statue. Not only did I recover my cultivation, I even obtained the complete pure maiden sutra. When he heard that, Su Zimo was finally relieved. Hey, do you know that a normal sacrifice can only inherit 70% of my cultivation, even if my cultivation is dissipated? A fragrant wind blew and Demoness Ji suddenly closed. She leaned over and leaned against Su Zimo as she whispered, there's a dermic formulation that can inherit 100% of my cultivation. Do you know what it is? If this was in the past, Su Zimo would have pushed Demoness Ji away or avoided her himself. However, he did not move this time round. On the one hand, he felt she pure maiden. On the other hand, after understanding the meaning of the tripod, He knew that Demoness G was merely bluffing and would not do anything out of line. What? Su Zimo asked instinctively. Demoness G smiled charmingly and crawled to Su Zimo's ear. She exhaled and whispered, "Dual cultivation." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he nearly lost control of his Dao heart. He exclaimed internally. Compared to 20 days ago, Demoness G's bewitchment skills were clearly even more frightening. "Stop fooling around." Su Zimo laughed bitterly with a helpless expression. "I'm not fooling around," Demoness G said. "After obtaining the complete Pure Maiden Sutra, I found out that there's a dual cultivation dermic formulation within that allows one's cultivation to increase instead of dissipating." Pausing for a moment, Demoness G chuckled. "Furthermore, it's beneficial to you as well." Swoosh! Su Zimo felt as though a ball of flames was rising within his body that he could not suppress. He retreated hurriedly and distanced himself from Demoness G. In the face of such a peerless beauty who could captivate all living things and charm the world, who would be able to resist whispering sweet nothings and seducing them? Su Zimo took a few deep breaths to compose himself. Prior to this, Demoness G had teased him in the same manner as well. However, at that time he could vaguely sense that she was merely joking. But now he had an illusion that Demoness G truly wanted to eat him up. There was a high chance that this dual cultivation dermic formulation was real. If his willpower wavered, he might really die together with Demoness G. Look how scared you are," Demoness G chuckled. Su Zimo changed the topic hurriedly and asked, "Why are you here?" "I came out of the Demoness Stone statue after receiving the inheritance not long ago, and headed to the Three Tribulations domain first," Demoness G said. "I only found out that you had already fought with Dean when I arrived. By the time I arrived, you had already left. I guessed that you would come looking for me, so I returned." "Guys, I really didn't want to disturb you guys." Not far away on a green rock, Lin Xuanji stood against the wind and could not help but say, however, "I've been standing here for half a day. Can the two of you take a look at me?" Su Zimo blushed. He was distracted by Demoness G and truly did not notice Lin Xuanji. Demoness G pursed her lips and smiled, bowing to Lin Xuanji. "Thank you for saving me, fellow Taoist Xuanji. I thank you here." Lin Xuanji waved it off and avoided Demoness G's gaze hurriedly, seemingly wary as well. He coughed gently and said, "It's best if you guys study what to do after leaving this place. Brother Su, you killed 8 titular disciples. Those 8 titular disciples represent the 8 super sects." Lin Xuanji said in a deep voice, "It's fine if you're in the Dao inheritance ground and conjoint body mighty figures can't attack. However, if you leave, the 8 super sects will definitely not let you off. If there's no other way, we can hide here for a while," Demoness G suggested. Su Zimo shook his head. He could afford to wait, but Solitary Cloud, who was in his storage bag, could not wait that long. The life preservation elixir could only keep Solitary Cloud alive for a month. Right now, 20 days had already passed. He had to return to Tianhuang mainland and think of all ways to save Solitary Cloud's life. Perhaps Elixir Yang sect would have some elixir that could revive Solitary Cloud. Seemingly able to read Su Zimo's mind, Lin Xuanji asked, "Are you still concerned about that WIRM?" Su Zimo remained silent. Lin Xuanji sighed. "In my opinion, there's no way to save that WIRM's injuries. Even in Elixir Yang sect, there's no elixir that can revive it." "We have to try," Su Zimo murmured softly and fell into deep thought. Middle Continent Chaos Essence Sect. Suddenly, an extremely furious roar sounded from a cave abode in the depths of the sect. Its might was wanton and its killing intent was chilling, causing the surrounding mountains and valleys to fall into dead silence. "Linsong, come over here." A cold voice sounded. Chaos Essence Sect Patriarch Linsong shuddered and hurried towards the back mountain of the sect. Chapter 1044. Arriving in front of a cave abode at the back of the mountain, Linsong, who was at the conjoint body realm and was the master of a sect, did not dare to be disrespectful and bowed. "Elder D, weren't you in seclusion? What happened?" Boom! There was a deafening sound. The door of the cave abode was shattered by a terrifying power and countless boulders smashed onto Linsong. However, Linsong did not dare to dodge and continued to bow slightly. A purple-robed figure walked out slowly with a burning gaze, and a massive might exuded from his body. Even the conjoint body mighty figure Lindsong almost could not withstand it and knelt on the ground. This was the Grand Elder of Chaos Essence Sect, a half-martial ancestor expert Defan. Seclusion. Defan's expression was dark as he said slowly, "If I continue in seclusion, Chaos Essence Sect will probably be destroyed. Let me ask you, is Dean still alive?" When he heard that, Lindsong's expression was terrified and he was drenched in sweat. "Elder Dean, he..." Lindsong hesitated for a moment and gulped before saying, "He's already dead. He was killed by Suzimo, Araki Takashi, who had just established his Dao in the Dao Inheritance Ground." Lindsong hurriedly recounted the news of the Dao Inheritance Ground. Indeed. Defan's gaze turned cold. Initially, he was indeed in seclusion. However, the moment Suzimo searched Yin's soul, he was still alarmed. "Elder D, please calm down," Lindsong said hurriedly. "Araki Takashi is protected by 100 Refinement Sect. We've already contacted Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Malevolent Earth Sect, Formless Monastery and other sections. We're prepared to join forces to kill 100 Refinement Sect and kill Araki Takashi. A debt of blood shall be paid in blood." "Why is it so troublesome to kill a void reversion?" Defan said coldly. "How long will it take to join forces with the other sects? What if something happens during this period of time and that lad escapes? I want him dead right now." Yin's death triggered Defan's killing intent. Lindsong smiled bitterly and said, "Elder D, this child is still in the Dao Inheritance Ground. That place is protected by the wills of many ancient mighty figures, and the power of conjoint body mighty figures can't penetrate it at all. We can only attack after he returns to Tianhuang mainland." "Is that so?" Defan narrowed his eyes. Lindsong's heart trembled as he vaguely realized something. He exclaimed, "Elder D, could it be that you want to, at the same time in 100 Refinement Sect?" "What? Dean is dead?" When the news spread, everyone in the 100 Refinement Sect was shocked. Although Suzimo was at the Void Reversion Realm, everyone felt that it would be extremely difficult for Suzimo to kill Dean. Perhaps victory and defeat could be determined between the two of them. However, it would be too difficult to determine life and death. Even Extreme Fire did not expect that Dean would be killed by Suzimo in the Dao Inheritance Ground. Including Dean, 8 titular disciples had already died in Suzimo's hands. Previously, when the 6 titular disciples died, Dao Lord White Flames, Dao Lord Scarlet Star and the others were already frowning and worried. Now that 8 titular disciples were dead, it meant that if 100 Refinement Sect dared to protect Suzimo, they would have to bear the wrath of the 8 super sects. Dao Inheritance Ground. Suzimo, Lin Xuanji and Demoness Ji were prepared to leave. "Brother Su, why are you still holding on to the creation Qinglian for no reason? Who else would dare to provoke you in this Dao Inheritance Ground?" Lin Xuanji could not help but purse his lips and ask when he saw that Suzimo was still holding on to the Qinglian and swinging it around. Suzimo smiled and did not explain. He kept feeling uneasy in his heart. Only by holding the green lotus of creation could he calm down. Right then he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His spirit perception warned him and an unprecedented sense of danger descended, causing his scalp to tingle and his heart to almost jump out of his chest. His previous uneasiness was merely illusory. But this time round, Suzimo truly sensed the aura of death. It was scarier than any danger he had experienced in the past. The skies of the Dao Inheritance Ground suddenly darkened. At that moment, every cultivator in the Dao Inheritance Ground felt their hearts skip a beat. An extremely terrifying might coiled above the firmaments, as though it was searching for something. Almost in the blink of an eye, it locked onto its location. This was a power that came from outside the Dao Inheritance Ground. Demoness Ji was shocked. "This is the Dao Inheritance Ground, how is this possible?" Lin Xuanji's eyes widened as though he had suddenly thought of something. He could not continue as fear shone in his eyes. Without hesitation, Suzimo pushed Demoness Ji and Lin Xuanji away. At the same time he swung the Qinglian with his right hand and injected dermic powers, while slapping his storage bag with his left hand. Swoosh! The Qinglian of creation rose from the ground and shone with a jade-green glow, heading against the firmaments. Its gigantic lotus leaves blotted out the skies, and its thick stem was like a stone pillar that pierced through the world. Snap! Right then, a crack suddenly appeared in the firmaments. Immediately after, a gigantic palm tore through the firmaments with a supreme might and crushed down fiercely, as though it wanted to destroy the world. The entire Tao inheritance ground trembled and swayed. The void around the gigantic palm collapsed inch by inch, and cracks appeared one after another. Even this space could not withstand the impact of that power. How terrifying was that power that even the void could not withstand? There was only a single target for that gigantic palm, Su Zimo, on the ground. At that moment, every cultivator in the Tao inheritance ground saw the gigantic palm and trembled with shocked expressions. That power was way too terrifying. Even conjoint body mighty figures like the Dharma Tao Jun would be destroyed in body and spirit by that power, let alone void reversions. Ino. Demoness Ji felt chills run down her spine as she looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away, and cried helplessly. Lin Xuanji looked at the descending palm and recalled his master's words. His master had once told him extremely sternly that Su Zimo would face a calamity upon entering the Tao inheritance ground this time round. At that time he did not think much of it. He thought that Su Zimo's calamity would land on the other titular disciples or Di'in, and he would have survived it safely. It was only now that he realized that the palm before him was Su Zimo's calamity. The power of the conjoint body realm could not penetrate the barrier of the Tao inheritance ground. There was only a single possibility for that palm to be able to penetrate the Tao inheritance ground and suppress down. A terrifying expert that surpassed the conjoint body realm had attacked. When he realized that, a look of sorrow and mockery flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes. The sorrow came from the fact that Su Zimo was dead for sure because of the attack of such a terrifying expert. However, what Lin Xuanji found ironic was that in order to kill Su Zimo and prevent him from growing, an expert that surpassed the conjoint body realm disregarded his dignity and killed a void reversion. Chapter 1045. If Lin Xuanji could guess it, Su Zimo could naturally deduce it as well. The fact that the barrier of the Tao inheritance ground could be broken meant that the cultivation of the attacker had already surpassed the conjoint body realm. An ancestor realm expert, be it a patriarch or a half-martial ancestor, a power of that level was definitely not something a void reversion could defend against. It was no exaggeration to say that if this was not the Tao inheritance ground, a single glance from an ancestor realm expert would be enough to kill a void reversion. Actually, the moment he failed to search Dian's soul, Su Zimo felt a vague sense of uneasiness. That was the reason why he had the creation Qinglian in his hands the entire time. However, he knew that even the creation Qinglian would not be able to defend against the power of an ancestor realm expert. The grade 6 creation Qinglian had only just entered maturity and was comparable to a Khanate Tao Lord Dermic weapon. It was far from its peak. It was as though the Khanate spirit weapon used by perfected being Jin Dan was placed in front of Su Zimo, and he could crush it casually. The difference in strength was way too great. Right now there was only a single chance to escape: the major transference talisman. Therefore, the moment Su Zimo sensed danger, he supported the creation Qinglian and took out the major transference talisman from his storage bag. Without hesitation he tore it apart. Ever since the old monk gave him the major transference talisman, he had not used it. According to the old monk, he could teleport him to the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley if he tore the major transference talisman. Su Zimo did not know if he could make it in time. He did not know if the power of an ancestor realm expert would interrupt the teleportation of the major transference talisman. More than that, he did not know if there would be any other changes during the process. He only knew one thing. This was his only chance at survival. The major transference talisman shattered. A strange power burst forth and space trembled violently. Immediately after, a gigantic black vortex appeared behind Su Zimo. It was deep and mysterious, as though it could devour everything. A terrifying suction force burst forth and pulled Su Zimo's body in. At the same time, Qinglian, who had risen against the momentum, collided head-on with the huge palm that was suppressing her. Boom! In an instant it was as if the world had stopped. Even the black vortex formed by the major transference talisman had stopped spinning. Every cultivator in the Tao inheritance ground looked up at the sky with their mouths agape, and their eyes filled with shock. In their line of sight in the entire world, there was only the creation Qinglian that rose against the tide, swaying and glowing, and a huge palm. Crack, crack, crack. Then, under the gazes of countless people, the thick green lotus stem broke inch by inch under the suppression of the huge palm, and the multicolored light dissipated. Creation Qinglian seemed to let out a sorrowful cry. The huge lotus leaf was also torn apart by this terrifying power. Lotus petals drifted down one by one. It was beautiful and sorrowful. The supreme artifact that had stolen the fortune of the heavens and earth had just shown its brilliance when it was mercilessly suppressed by a giant hand and crippled. The cultivator stared at this scene in silence for a long time. Everything seemed to indicate something. The fate of the strongest monster incarnate in history seemed to be identical to that of the creation Qinglian that rose against the tide and was unwilling to submit. The creation Qinglian was already suppressed. How could this person escape? The shattered lotus stem, leaves and bare lotus platform were all sucked into the black vortex behind Su Zimo. With the momentary obstruction of the creation Qinglian, Su Zimo had at least torn the major transference talisman and entered the dark teleportation tunnel. The crisis seemed to have passed. However, the owner of the palm did not allow it at all. Trying to escape? A cold and sinister voice sounded from the firmaments. Boom! The gigantic palm suddenly descended, as though it had broken through the restrictions of space and reached into the pitch-black vortex, grabbing towards the fleeing Su Zimo. This was the power and methods of an ancestor realm expert. Even if he released the major transference talisman first, it was impossible for him to escape from the eyes of an ancestor realm expert. Su Zimo, who was in the teleportation tunnel, did not have the time to grieve for the destruction of the creation Qinglian. The calamity had already descended once more. Everything happened too quickly. From the moment he tore the major transference talisman to him being dragged into the pursuit of the gigantic palm, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Without time to think, Su Zimo could only raise his right hand instinctively and block in front of him. Bang! The two palms collided. A terrifying force collided with the divine phoenix bone. Screech! In the teleportation tunnel, a clear and melodious phoenix cry resounded. It pierced through metal and cracked stone, and it carried with it a boundless majesty. Immediately after, Su Zimo's right hand released an extremely scorching aura, as though it could incinerate and destroy all living beings. His right hand had already vanished completely, and was replaced by a gigantic and menacing claw. It was scarlet and blazed with shocking divine flames. The power of the divine phoenix bone was completely activated and revealed its true form. The divine phoenix's claw. The divine phoenix's claw descended with divine flames burning on it, and the aura of a god, colliding with the gigantic palm of the ancestor realm expert. Boom! Su Zimo shuddered as though he was struck by lightning. Although the divine phoenix bone was undamaged against the power of an ancestor realm expert, it could not defend against the remnant power of the ancestor realm expert that surged into his body through the divine phoenix bone. The bones in Su Zimo's body were not divine phoenix bones after all. Just a single strand of residual energy entering his body was absolutely destructive to his physical body. Crack! 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 His bones shattered into pieces the size of fingernails and none of them were intact. His flesh exploded and he was almost smashed into pieces. This powerful body that had been cultivated for more than 100 years was completely crippled against the remnant power of an ancestor realm expert. There was no longer any vitality in his body. Furthermore, this was under the premise that the divine phoenix bone blocked most of the power of the ancestor realm expert. If not for the divine phoenix bone, Su Zimo's body and spirit would have been destroyed in a single strike and his body would have been crushed into dust by the gigantic palm. This collision caused Su Zimo's figure to fall rapidly into the depths of the black vortex and disappear into the darkness. The huge palm reached in again, but it didn't catch anything. The ancestor realm expert harumphed coldly. The gigantic palm retracted from the black vortex and retreated from the Dao inheritance ground. It was only at this moment that the terrifying pressure in the void dissipated slowly. After a long silence, the entire Dao inheritance ground burst into an uproar. Heavens! Araki Takashi established his Dao and killed 8 titular disciples. To think that an ancestor realm expert would attack. I wonder if it's a Mahayana patriarch or a half-martial ancestor. It must be a half-martial ancestor. At the Mahayana patriarch realm, their horizons are broadened and they are focused on pursuing the great Tao. Why would they make a fuss over such a small matter? An ancestor realm expert killing a void reversion is truly disregarding his dignity and unscrupulous means. From today onwards, there will be no more Araki Takashi. Some people lamented, some sighed, some gloated and some were devastated. Demoness Ji's tears gushed like a fountain as she sobbed silently. Lin Xuanji stood there in a daze, as though he could not recover from the shock of that scene. A moment later he said, "Fellow Taoist pure maiden, Brother Su is not dead yet. There might still be a chance for a turnaround." Chapter 1046. Before long, news spread to Tianhuang mainland one after another, causing a huge uproar. An ancestor realm expert has attacked. Which sect is he from? I don't know. There's a high chance that he's from Chaos Essence sect. The creation Qinglian was shattered and Araki Takashi's body was crippled. He was teleported away by the major transference talisman and his whereabouts are unknown. No one knows if he's dead or alive. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Araki Takashi is too sharp and it's his fate to face this calamity. Ever since the catastrophe of the Great Qian Empire 10,000 years ago, there was almost no news of an ancestor realm expert attacking in the cultivation world. But this time round, Araki Takashi's Tao establishment and calamity of the title caused an ancestor realm expert to attack. This news was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples and shocked Tianhuang mainland. Before long, the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries and other super sects knew that the person who attacked was Chaos Essence sect's D Fan, a half-martial ancestor expert. Middle Continent Chaos Essence sect. D Fan retracted his palm slowly with a dark expression. His eyes flickered without any emotions. Elder D, is that lad dead? Chaos Essence sect's patriarch asked cautiously. D Fan said expressionlessly, "No. His body and the creation Qinglian were crippled by me. However, he still managed to escape with the major transference talisman." Why does that lad have a treasure like the major transference talisman? D Fan's tone was sinister. He was still infuriated that he did not manage to kill Su Zimo with his attack. The major transference talisman can teleport to a fixed location. Chaos Essence sect's patriarch said in a deep voice, "I've heard Dean mention before that the first time he met Araki Takashi was at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley." "Oh, Dragon Burial Valley?" D Fan raised his brow and said slowly, "I heard from the patriarch that there seems to be an old monk at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Is he not dead yet?" "No, but after 10,000 years, that old monk doesn't have much lifespan left. He should be dying soon." When the patriarch of the Hunyuan sect heard the words ancestor, his expression turned cold. A hint of awe flashed across his eyes as he replied in a deep voice. The old ancestor that D Fan mentioned was the only Mahayana patriarch of the D clan. His seniority was even higher than D Fan's. During the calamity of the Grand Qian Empire 10,000 years ago, it was precisely because of this D clan's ancestor that the ancestral rank evil dragon was annihilated. D Fan and the fallen Dean were both descendants of the D clan's patriarch. However, the ancestor of the D family was not in the Hunyuan sect. D Fan waved his hand and said coldly, "Spread the news that Araki Takashi is at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Contact Heavenly Dipper sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace and other sects to storm the Dragon Burial Valley." The patriarch of the Hunyuan sect frowned and said hesitantly, "Elder D, that old monk is still alive. After all, he was a Mahayana realm patriarch. It's all right." D Fan sneered and said, "How much combat power can a Mahayana patriarch who is already in his twilight years have deteriorated? He might not even be able to defend against a conjoint body mighty figure. I don't believe that an old bald monk like him who doesn't have much lifespan left will be able to defend against the attacks of the 8 super sects after Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery are destroyed." Pausing for a moment, D Fan's eyes were filled with killing intent as he said coldly, "At most, I'll attack again. Middle Continent, 100 Refinement sect." Everyone from 100 Refinement Sect was worried about how to deal with the encirclement of the 8 super sects when news of an Ancestor Realm expert attacking spread. Everyone was shocked. Killing intent burst forth from Shura Yanbeichen and was almost corporeal. His gaze was sinister, as though it was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He had thought of all possibilities and even prepared for the worst. He wanted to flee with Su Zimo. However, he had not expected an Ancestor Realm expert to attack. This was akin to an adult burly man killing a baby in swaddling clothes by hook or by crook. The difference between a void reversion and an Ancestor Realm expert was even greater than the difference between a baby and a burly man. An Ancestor Realm expert is attacking a void reversion. Chaos Essence Sect is truly shameless for the sake of revenge. Elder Gu said hatefully. Elder Gu shook his head. I'm afraid it's not just for revenge. That's right, Shangguanzi said. He established his Dao heart by stepping on the corpses of 8 titular disciples. Once such a monster incarnate grows up, it will be a disaster for super sects like Chaos Essence Sect. Killing a monster incarnate is the true reason why an Ancestor Realm expert attacked. Hakia Dojin stood silently at the side, frowning in deep thought. Extreme Fire, don't worry too much, Shangguanzi said softly. According to the news that came, Zimo has already been teleported away and his fate is unknown. There's still hope. Everyone knew that that was just a consolation. Creation Qinglian's body was crippled by an Ancestor Realm expert one after another. Even if he survived, the monster incarnate of the past was already gone. Shangguanzi sighed softly. I wonder where that child was teleported to. I know, right then Extreme Fire spoke. Everyone was stunned. Shangguanzi could vaguely sense that Extreme Fire's expression seemed to be much more relaxed after hearing that Su Zimo tore the major transference talisman and escaped. Extreme Fire said, Zimo should have gone to the Dragon Burial Valley. Dragon Burial Valley? I heard that an evil dragon was buried in the Dragon Burial Valley 10,000 years ago. Patriarchs died and emperors bled. It's an ominous place. Why would Zimo be there? Everyone asked hurriedly. Before Extreme Fire could explain, a spirit crane flew in from outside. The spirit crane was filled with immortal qi and had flesh and blood. It was extremely agile and arrived before Shangguanzi. Suddenly, it transformed into a paper crane and floated into her palm. Another huge piece of news from the cultivation world. Everyone was shocked. Shangguanzi opened the spirit crane and her expression changed gradually. How is it? Worried about Su Zimo, Yan Beichen took the initiative to ask. Shangguanzi had a grim expression and said in a deep voice, Extreme Fire is right. Zimo should have been teleported to the Dragon Burial Valley. However, for some reason, this news has already spread in the cultivation world. Everyone exclaimed. All the cultivators present quickly realized what kind of consequences this news would bring if it were to spread. Shangguanzi continued. The spirit crane said that conjoint body mighty figures of the 5 immortal sects, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Chaos Essence Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Sword Sect and Glass Palace, the 2 Fiend Sects, Hidden Death Sect and Malevolent Earth Sect, Formless Monastery of the Buddhist Monasteries and the Heretical Poison Sect have all appeared and are rushing to the North Region's Dragon Burial Valley. Apart from the 8 super sects that everyone had expected, Sword Sect was involved as well. These were the 9 super sects. Everyone's expressions were terrible. Everyone knew that there was no way Su Zimo could escape this calamity. Elder Gu sighed. For a void reversion, so many super sects have joined forces and so many conjoint body mighty figures have appeared. They're bent on killing him. Without another word, Yan Beichen turned to leave. Where are you going? Extreme Fire reached out and stopped him. To the Dragon Burial Valley. Yan Beichen's voice was cold. Extreme Fire shook his head. It's too late for you to go now. The movement techniques of conjoint body mighty figures are much faster than yours. It only takes 2 to 3 days to travel from the middle continent to the north region. Furthermore, you're injured. You'll be sending yourself to your death if you rush over. What should I do then? Just wait? Yan Beichen clenched his fists tightly. Extreme Fire had a strange expression as he murmured softly, let's wait for the news. If Zimo returns to the Dragon Burial Valley, I won't be worried anymore. Chapter 1047. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. 10,000-year-old temple. In the cemetery in the backyard of the main hall, an old monk sat there. His beard and brows were white and he was emaciated. Seated on the ground, he was chanting the rebirth mantra softly towards the cemetery. In the cemetery, a red-haired burly man with disheveled hair and tattered clothes sat inside. His body was coiled with rusty chains. The scarlet-haired burly man leaned against a stone stele listlessly, and was about to doze off amidst the chanting of the old monk. "Old bald monk, you're nagging here every day. It's fine if you're dead, but you're annoying the living to death." The scarlet-haired burly man dozed off and mumbled. The old monk turned a deaf ear and continued chanting. All of a sudden, the scarlet-haired burly man's expression changed as though he sensed something. He stood up with a bang and the chains on his body vibrated. The scarlet-haired burly man stared at the void not far away with bright eyes. There was no hint of fatigue on his face. Suddenly the chanting stopped. As though he sensed something, the old monk flicked his sleeves and created a gigantic crack in the void not far away, causing a pile of items to fall out. There were broken lotus stems, shattered lotus leaves and a bare lotus platform. Immediately after, a figure fell out. It was Su Zimo who tore apart the major transference talisman and escaped from the hands of the half-martial ancestor expert, D. Fan. Bang! Su Zimo's body fell heavily to the ground motionlessly. It was not that he did not want to move, but his body had already lost all vitality. Although his essence spirit was not destroyed, he could no longer control this body. The scarlet-haired burly man was shocked when he saw the mangled body. "He's so severely injured?" The scarlet-haired burly man could tell with a single glance that the body was completely crippled. His bones were shattered and his organs were smashed into mush. His flesh was lifeless without any vitality. To put it simply, even if the owner of this body was a conjoint body mighty figure, he would not be able to save it. The power of a conjoint body mighty figure could regenerate severed limbs. However, Su Zimo was a Mahayana patriarch if his body was destroyed to this extent. Every Mahayana patriarch knew a divine power, rebirth from a single drop of blood. A single drop of blood was all it took to reconstruct the body. The old monk looked at the battered body and frowned as well. Even the Grade 6 Fortune Realm Qinglian was shattered? The red-haired man's face gradually turned ugly. To be able to shatter a Grade 6 creation, Qinglian's strength was probably beyond the conjoint body realm. Could it be that an ancestor realm expert made a move? The red-haired man's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he was enraged. Although there were no hard and fast rules in the cultivation world, it was truly inexcusable for an ancestor realm expert to kill a void reversion. Motherf **Ker. He's really bullying this kid because he doesn't have a backer. The red-haired man cursed. His nose twitched as he sniffed the air. His face turned even uglier. He gnashed his teeth and said, "She's a descendant of the D family, and a descendant of his." At this moment 2 beams of light flew out from the broken body. They were Su Zimo's 2 great primordial spirits, the red-haired Een spirit, and the black-haired primordial spirit. Looking at Su Zimo's scarlet-haired Een spirit, the red-haired burly man's eyes lit up with satisfaction. However, he soon frowned. "Your essence spirit is injured as well?" A look of rage flashed through the red-haired burly man's eyes. "Master." The 2 essence spirits bowed to the old monk first before turning to look at the red-haired burly man with complicated expressions. If Su Zimo was not wrong, the red-headed ghost that he had mentioned was most likely the culprit behind the catastrophe back then. That evil dragon. "What are you looking at?" The red-headed ghost glared. "I'm that illumination dragon from back then, so what? You've also drunk my blood for 20 years at the bottom of this valley." When he heard the red-headed ghost say that, Su Zimo no longer had any doubts. However, he was truly in no mood to argue with the red-headed ghost. He felt a wave of sorrow as he looked at the lifeless body on the ground. It was not because he had lost his physical body. He was a void reversion and would not die even if he lost his physical body. Furthermore, if he lost his physical body, he could just create another one at most. It was also not because of how strong this body was and how many years of cultivation were destroyed. It was because he had been cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness ever since he started cultivating. This body carried traces of Daiyu. When his bloodline phenomenon was pushed to its limits, a blood-colored butterfly would even be created. However, all of that would no longer exist. That was the reason why he could not bear to part with it. The red-headed ghost looked at the old monk. Old bald monk, let's follow my plan. That's the only way we can resolve his crisis. That's the only way. The old monk sighed gently. The red-headed ghost shouted to Suzimo, hey lad, do you want this body to recover to its original state? You have a way? Suzimo was invigorated and his eyes lit up. The red-headed ghost laughed strangely. Of course I have a way. If you nod your head, I'll give you a huge opportunity. It's way too easy for this body to recover. The true benefits are yet to come. Speak. Suzimo calmed down and did not agree immediately. From now on, this body of yours will only be managed by this essence spirit. The red-headed ghost pointed to the scarlet-haired Een spirit and said, your essence spirit and body can head to the Dragon Bone Valley. There's a divine spring inside that can heal your body and essence spirit injuries. The divine spring of the primordial era has the miraculous effect of reviving the dead and regrowing flesh and bones. It has long gone extinct. However, there's a spring in the Dragon Bone Valley. Suzimo knew that the red-headed ghost would not lie to him about something as such. Since he said that the primordial divine spring had such an effect, it must be true. The red-headed ghost continued, if your body recovers, you'll have to join the dragons and cultivate in the Dragon Bone Valley. No one will dare to bully you to this extent in the future. With the dragons of the primordial 9 races as backing, who would dare to provoke them? Not the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries. After pondering for a moment, Suzimo asked again, what about my black-haired essence spirit? That was the key. If his body recovered and belonged to the scarlet-haired Een spirit alone, it would mean that his entire body, from his bloodline to his essence spirit, would be completely dragons. Suzimo was born as a human and wanted to establish the Tao for all living beings. He did not want to be reduced to an alien race completely. However, this was indeed a massive opportunity for him. The greatest benefit was naturally that his body could recover to its original state. If he could cultivate in the Dragon Bone Valley, it might be of great help to his cultivation of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. There was an essence spirit secret skill and a dermic art in the yang spirit section. The dermic art was barren. Suzimo only had a rough understanding of barren and could release it simply. He did not manage to unleash its full power. Furthermore, he could not control the range of the technique perfectly. Up till now, he could not understand the profoundness of the essence spirit secret skill. If he could cultivate in the Dragon Bone Valley, it would be extremely helpful for him to control barren and comprehend the essence spirit secret skill. After all, the Yin and Yang spirit sections of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness were adapted from the cultivation of the Dragon King of Desolate Ocean. Chapter 1048. Suzimo asked, what about my black-haired essence spirit? Up to you then. The red-headed ghost waved his hand and pouted his lips nonchalantly. In any case, this body of the dragons will be your true body from now on. At most, you can just refine a body for your black-haired essence spirit and cultivate it as a clone. No. The old monk shook his head and suddenly said, the dragons can be cultivated as a clone. This black-haired essence spirit is Zimo's true body. *T. The red-headed ghost was anxious. That body is connected to the lad's bloodline, so of course it's the true body of the dragons. There's only a black-haired essence spirit here without a physical body. How can it be considered a true body? The old monk shook his head and said resolutely, however, he's a human after all. Therefore, the body reconstructed by the black-haired essence spirit is his true body. As for the dragons, they can only be considered as clones. The two of them started arguing over this matter. The old monk refused to back down as well. Both of them were clear about Suzimo's potential. If he was allowed to grow, he would definitely become an extremely terrifying existence that could change the situation of Tianhuang mainland. The reason why the red-headed ghost wanted the scarlet-haired Een spirit to be his true body was naturally for the sake of the dragons. At the same time, The old monk's original intention was for the human race to have hope in the future. Master Red-Headed Ghost, stop arguing. Su Zimo's gaze was resolute, as though he had made a decision. He said slowly, be it the scarlet-haired Een spirit or the body of the black-haired essence spirit, they're not clones. They're both my true bodies, Su Zimo. The two of them were stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. If an ordinary cultivator were to refine a clone, they would at most inject a spirit consciousness or remnant consciousness into the clone. However, Su Zimo's situation was extremely special. He had truly cultivated two primordial spirits, two essence spirits that would not affect each other, even if they cultivated separately. These two great primordial spirits were both his, so how could there be a clone? Since they were destined to cultivate separately, he would cultivate two true bodies in the future. The old monk and Red-Headed Ghost stopped arguing. Both of them could accept this result. Of course, there was another important reason why Su Zimo agreed to let the scarlet-haired Een spirit bring his physical body to the Dragon Bone Valley. Red-Headed Ghost, I have a condition, Su Zimo suddenly said. The Red-Headed Ghost raised his brow and looked at Su Zimo from the corner of his eyes. You've already gotten such a huge advantage. What other conditions do you want? I have to bring another person with me, Su Zimo said. No. The Red-Headed Ghost rejected flatly without even thinking. What kind of place do you take the Dragon Bone Valley for anyone to enter? Su Zimo gave it some thought and said, to be precise, he's not a human. He's a ferocious flood dragon. After absorbing some dragon chi, he will definitely be able to transform into a true dragon in the future. Another important reason why Su Zimo planned to head to Dragon Bone Valley was because of Solitary Cloud. In order to save him, Solitary Cloud ended up in such a state with his fate unknown. He had to give Solitary Cloud an opportunity so that he would not let Solitary Cloud down for risking his life to follow him. No, it's even more impossible for a flood dragon. The Red-Headed Ghost pursed his lips. Let's put it this way. Someone like you who has drunk my dragon blood for 20 years has an impure bloodline. It's already not bad that I can send you in. What's the big deal about a flood dragon absorbing some dragon chi to cultivate? In other words, even if he can enter, he'll be bullied to death by the true dragons of Dragon Bone Valley. Su Zimo did not back down. If someone bullies him, I'll naturally be there. However, I have to bring him over. If Solitary Cloud could cultivate in an environment like the Dragon Bone Valley, his chances of transforming into a true dragon would be greatly increased. Brat, you only know how to push your luck. F***ck, I even had to stuff a little flood dragon snake in to save you. What's the point of that? The Red-Headed Ghost cursed and glanced at Su Zimo from the corner of his eye. When he saw that the latter did not back down, he grumbled, all right, I'll bring him along then. However, the Red-Headed Ghost changed the topic. I'll put it bluntly first. None of the dragons are kind. Don't blame me if he's bullied to death inside. Thanks, Su Zimo cupped his fists. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo continued, Red-Headed Ghost, I have another condition. What? The Red-Headed Ghost jumped up in anger and the chains on his body rattled. He huffed and glared. Rascal, don't push your luck. If you force me into a corner, I won't even care about you anymore. Su Zimo said to himself, I'll bring him in. He has to follow me to that primordial divine spring to recuperate. No way. The Red-Headed Ghost rejected flatly and glared at Su Zimo angrily, gritting his teeth. Do you think that anyone can soak in that divine spring? I've already told you my lips off to let you in. Yet, you want to bring a little flood dragon snake in? Su Zimo thought for a moment. As long as you can save him, it's fine even if he doesn't soak in the primordial divine spring. Leave it to me. It's just a lousy little flood dragon. I can revive him with a single drop of blood. The Red-Headed Ghost said confidently. When he heard that, Su Zimo carefully removed Solitary Cloud from his storage bag and placed it in front of the Red-Headed Ghost. The Red-Headed Ghost took a look and his face darkened, almost cursing. This fellow's injuries were similar to Su Zimo's. His chest was penetrated and his heart was shattered. His essence spirit was almost destroyed and he was only hanging on by a breath of life. He could dissipate at any moment. A single drop of blood from him would most likely kill the flood dragon right away. Creak, creak, Creak. The red-headed ghost ground his teeth in silence. Suzimo shrugged. Look, you still can't do it. Then I'll have to bring him to that primordial hot spring. It's the divine spring. The red-headed ghost rolled his eyes and cursed. Hot your head. No way. The red-headed ghost pondered for a long time and shook his head in rejection. Then I'm not going either. Suzimo went all out. The old monk watched from the side with a smile without saying anything. The red-headed ghost stomped his feet in anger, but there was nothing he could do to Suzimo. A moment later, the red-headed ghost said, I can agree to your condition, but you can't raise any other conditions. He was truly afraid now. If Suzimo went crazy and brought a nest of monsters over, the Dragonbone Valley would be in complete chaos. All right, Suzimo agreed. The red-headed ghost heaved a sigh of relief. All right, I'll agree to your 2 conditions as well. Taking a deep breath, the red-headed ghost cut his fingertip and a drop of scarlet blood dripped down, emitting a terrifying aura and immense life force. The red-headed ghost changed hand seals repeatedly and let out a series of strange sounds. The drop of blood hovered in midair without dissipating. After a short while, the drop of blood gradually transformed into a crimson divine dragon. Its horns were lofty and lifelike. Go on, the red-headed ghost murmured softly. The tiny divine dragon roared and turned into a scarlet streak of light, tearing through the air and vanishing before long. Chapter 1049. Zimo, think about what you're going to take away. The old monk said, the Dragonbone Valley is the resting place of primordial dragons. Your bloodline is impure, and you'll definitely be rejected upon entering. I'm afraid you'll be in a difficult situation. Indeed, Suzimo's body had an impure bloodline. However, his bloodline was derived from cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Combined with the blood of the illumination dragon, it was even more terrifying than a pure-blooded illumination dragon. There's no need to worry too much. No matter where it is, strength reigns supreme. The red-headed ghost said, whoever's fist is bigger has the final say. If you can beat those little bastards of the dragon clan into submission, you will naturally gain their recognition. Suzimo nodded. He had many treasures on him and his 2 essence spirits were going to cultivate separately. He had to make careful arrangements. The bronze square tripod was the destiny-dermic weapon of the scarlet-haired Een spirit, and naturally had to follow him. The illumination stone could only be used in this body, and had to follow the scarlet-haired Een spirit to the Dragonbone Valley as well. Of course, in Dragonbone Valley, his greatest reliance was still his physical body and bloodline. This true body of the dragons would continue to cultivate according to the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. To a certain extent, the true body of the dragons was a Tao that Dai you had chosen for Suzimo, and he would continue walking it to the end. After the black-haired essence spirit reconstructed his body and fused with the immortal Buddhist and fiend Taoists of the human race, it would be another Tao. However, that might not be his Tao. Suzimo was going to carve out a Tao that belonged to him. Before long, a mighty dragon roar sounded in the skies above the Dragon Burial Valley, shaking the world with a power that could make all living beings submit. The red-headed ghost opened his mouth and let out a dragon roar as well. Immediately after, a divine dragon covered in fiery red scales and towering horns descended in the sky above the ancient temple. The divine dragon's gaze was like a torch as it surveyed the area below. A red beard fluttered beneath its chin and its body burned with flames, exuding a wanton might. A series of fine cracks appeared in the void around the divine dragon. It trembled slightly and a strong gust of wind howled. The old monk frowned. This was the resting place of many experts 10,000 years ago. He was naturally displeased to be disturbed as such. Whoosh! A rusty chain shot out from the mausoleum and tore through the air. It was extremely fast and arrived in an instant. Even the divine dragon in mid-air did not have time to react before it was heavily whipped. Transform into your human form and get down here. The red-headed ghost's voice sounded. This majestic divine dragon actually obediently transformed into a middle-aged man in a red robe and descended into the cemetery. Patriarch, you really didn't die. When the scarlet-robed man caught sight of the red-headed ghost, he was agitated and his eyes were filled with endless joy. Suzimo could tell that this joy could not be faked. came from the bottom of his heart. Upon hearing the scarlet-robed man address the red-headed ghost as clan leader, it was not difficult to tell that the red-headed ghost had an extremely high status among dragons back then. He was either the clan leader of the dragons, or the clan leader of the Illumination Dragon lineage. However, Su Zimo did not know what kind of status the Torch Dragon had among the dragons. He knew very little about dragons. Clan leader, the chains on your body? When the scarlet-robed man caught sight of the chains on the red-headed ghost, his eyes widened with rage and killing intent as he walked forward, wanting to rip the chains apart. You don't have to care about these scrap metals, the red-headed ghost pouted. If I wanted to, I would have ripped them apart long ago. Why haven't you returned after so many years, clan leader? The scarlet-robed man could not help but ask. The moment he said that, he seemed to have thought of something and turned around suddenly, glaring at the old monk not far away with a murderous aura. It must be that old bald monk. Don't worry, clan leader. That old bald monk's blood chi is weak. Watch me kill him. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. It was no wonder why this scarlet-robed man was from the Illumination Dragon lineage. His temper was way too fiery. Suppress your head. The red-headed ghost shook the chains and whipped the scarlet-robed man once more. The scarlet-robed man could have dodged, but he did not move and allowed the red-headed ghost to whip him. There's another reason why I stayed here all these years. You don't have to know. The red-headed ghost did not explain to him and said in a deep voice, I called you here today for something else. Bring him back to the Dragon Bone Valley and treat his injuries at the primordial divine spring. If the elders in the clan don't allow it, say that it's my intention. As he said that, the red-headed ghost pointed to Su Zimo. Him! The scarlet-robed man glanced at Su Zimo's lifeless body that was slumped on the ground, and then at the scarlet-haired Eam spirit. Frowning, he asked, Clan leader, this lad's bloodline is impure. There's no need to value him so highly, right? Arrange according to my instructions. The red-headed ghost's tone was unquestionable. Also, there's a W-worm snake beside this lad that's severely injured as well. Bring it to the primordial divine spring as well. Ah! The scarlet-robed man was stunned. The red-headed ghost was the clan leader of the Illumination Dragon lineage, and had an extremely high status among the dragons. However, these arrangements were truly against the rules. Clan leader, this will definitely attract criticism. The scarlet-robed man frowned. Even if the elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage agree, I'm afraid the elders of the other 4 dragon lineages will step in to stop us. Stop what? The red-headed ghost stood up with a bang and his eyes shone with a red light. With a torrential aura, he shouted, I've left the clan for 10,000 years and I can't even arrange for 2 people to recuperate at the primordial divine spring? It's not impossible, but the 2 of them. The scarlet-robed man hesitated. The primordial divine spring was extremely rare. Only some of the dragons with the purest bloodlines and extremely high statuses were qualified to enter. Su Zimo and Solitary Cloud were not qualified at all. To be precise, the 2 of them could not even be considered as dragons of the lowest lineage among dragons. The red-headed ghost fell silent. After a long time, he looked at the scarlet-robed man and asked, Do you know why I called you here? I don't know. The scarlet-robed man had a respectful expression. The red-headed ghost pointed at Su Zimo and said word by word, From this day forth, you'll treat him as my bloodline and son. Ah! The scarlet-robed man's expression changed starkly as he exclaimed. Su Zimo was shocked as well. He often bickered with the red-headed ghost. To think that he would have such weight in the latter's heart. The red-headed ghost said slowly, Is my child qualified to recuperate at the primordial divine spring? Yes. The scarlet-robed man nodded without hesitation. The red-headed ghost continued, Go back and tell those old fogies of the Illumination Dragon lineage that from this day forth, I'll no longer occupy the title of Zhu. Leave it to the juniors to fight for. Clan leader. The scarlet-robed man was moved. Su Zimo was confused when he heard that, not understanding the meaning behind the title of Zhu that the red-headed ghost mentioned. The red-headed ghost looked into the distance with an unresolvable sorrow in the depths of his eyes. After a while, he retracted his gaze and looked at Su Zimo at the side. There was no hostility or killing intent on his face, and there was a rare benevolence in his eyes. If Yen was still around, he would be the same as you. That bravery, that fearlessness, that persistence and that sincerity. When he heard that, the scarlet-robed man had a sorrowful expression and tears welled in his eyes. The old monk sighed deeply and shook his head as well. Chapter 1050. For some unknown reason, Su Zimo felt a sense of sorrow as well. He could tell that the Yen that the red-headed ghost was referring to was definitely the person closest to him. Unfortunately, he was no longer around. Although the red-headed ghost looked carefree and even a little neurotic, there was a sorrow that no one else could touch in the depths of his heart. Was the red-headed ghost an evil dragon? 10,000 years ago, the red-headed ghost destroyed the Great Qian Empire, Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery, causing a massive catastrophe and killing so many people. He was unpardonable. However, in Su Zimo's eyes, the red-headed ghost was merely a pitiful person. It was hard to imagine what he had experienced back then for him to burst forth with such rage and killing intent. What was it that triggered that catastrophe 10,000 years ago? Su Zimo could guess the reason why the red-headed ghost refused to stay here. It was most likely due to guilt or atonement. The old monk did not seem to have the hatred towards the red-headed ghost as he imagined. The red-headed ghost had accidentally revealed that Dai Yu seemed to have helped him. What happened when Dai Yu came here to retrieve the Soraka flower back then? Su Zimo's heart was filled with confusion. Lad, you don't have to worry about heading to the Dragon Bone Valley, the red-headed ghost asked. Did you devour a dragon egg before? Knowing that he could not hide this matter, Su Zimo nodded. The red-headed ghost said, this matter is both major and minor. Actually, the dragon egg you saw was a dead egg. Ah! Su Zimo was stunned. The red-headed ghost explained, dragons have a noble and powerful bloodline with long lifespans and strong combat strength. However, it's not without weaknesses. Dragons have extremely poor reproductive abilities. Dragons have a very low success rate in nurturing a dragon egg. Even if they can, the survival rate of the dragon egg isn't high either. When he heard that, Su Zimo nodded to himself. If dragons had the reproductive abilities of humans, they would have occupied Tianhuang mainland a long time ago with such a massive race. Even if 10 human sovereigns appeared, it would be useless. The red-headed ghost replied, dragon eggs that can truly survive have long been carefully protected by powerful dragons day and night. How could you possibly come into contact with them? Su Zimo carefully recalled. After he and Night Spirit had passed through a sea of bones, they had climbed up a mountain and entered the huge cave. They had not encountered any obstacles along the way. In fact, it was only after they had sucked the dragon egg clean that a green divine dragon appeared. This is Long Yen. From now on you can call him Uncle Yen. The red-headed ghost pointed at the scarlet-robed man and said to Su Zimo, Uncle Yen. Su Zimo did not hesitate. The red-haired Yin spirit bowed towards Long Yen. Unexpectedly, Long Yen accepted Su Zimo's bow, and immediately returned the bow. With a respectful attitude, he said in a deep voice, Long Yen greets young master. Young master? Su Zimo was slightly taken aback. This title was not small at all. The red-headed ghost's expression was calm and he was not surprised. Follow Long Yen and cultivate well in the Dragon Bone Valley. If you have any doubts, ask Long Yen along the way. Once we're there, you'll be called Long Mo for the time being. The red-headed ghost looked deeply at Su Zimo. I believe that your future will not be limited to being the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage. The old monk nodded as well. Go on. The chaos of Tianhuang mainland has already appeared, and a calamity will descend. Your true body of dragons might be able to survive this calamity safely if you cultivate in the Dragon Bone Valley. Master red-headed ghost, I'll take my leave. The scarlet-haired Yin spirit bowed deeply to the old monk and red-headed ghost before turning to leave with Long Yen. Everything that he wanted to bring, including his shattered body, had already been placed into Su Zimo's storage bag. The scarlet-haired Yin spirit carried it and followed behind Long Yen. Before long, the scarlet-haired Yin spirit vanished from the Dragon Burial Valley. Although the two essence spirits were getting further and further away, there was still an extremely mysterious connection. In midair, Long Yan was intentionally taking care of Su Zimo's scarlet-haired spirit and was not fast. How long have you been cultivating? Long Yan asked. Su Zimo replied. More than 100 years. Your potential is pretty good. Long Yan praised and said, however, Patriarch has even greater expectations for you. I don't know what he sees in you, but I'll do my best to support you. How far you can go will depend on yourself. Su Zimo nodded. Let me give you a simple introduction of the dragons. Among the dragons there are 5 major bloodline inheritances. They are the horned, blue, hornless, illumination and winged dragons. These 5 bloodline inheritances are known as the 5 dragon lineages. Their bloodlines are the purest and their combat strength is the strongest. The horned dragon is metal, the blue dragon is wood, the hornless dragon is water, the illumination dragon is fire and the winged dragon is earth. The 5 dragon lineages specialize in different things as well. Long Yan said, generally speaking, among the 5 dragon lineages, the blue dragon lineage is the strongest. The blue dragon lineage inherited the most bloodline of the sacred beast, the azure dragon, and is also the closest to the azure dragon. Realization dawned on Su Zimo. It was no wonder why he had read similar introductions in some ancient books, saying that the blue dragon was the azure dragon. However, in reality, the blue dragon inherited the most bloodline of the azure dragon. The azure dragon was a sacred beast. In the vast world, including the upper world, there were only 4 of them. The blue dragon was far inferior to the azure dragon. Long Yan thought for a moment and continued, of course, apart from the 5 dragon lineages, there's also the mixed dragon lineage in the Dragonbone Valley. That includes some dragon species with thin bloodlines such as the flood dragon, cloud dragon, rain dragon, coiling dragon, etc. The mixed dragon lineage has a low status. In the Dragonbone Valley, they do lowly things and serve as slaves for the dragons of the 5 dragon lineages. Pausing for a moment, Long Yan said, to be fair, your bloodline and that flood dragon's bloodline can't even be considered as the mixed dragon lineage. The mixed dragon lineage merely had a thin bloodline. As for Su Zimo, his bloodline was impure. The nature of the two was completely different. As for Solitary Cloud, not only was the bloodline of the dragons in his body so thin that it was almost non-existent, it was also impure and could not even be considered as a remnant of the dragons. The clan leader saved me once and I'm indebted to you. I have no complaints if I acknowledge you as the young master. However, the others in the Illumination Dragon lineage will definitely not think that way. Long Yan said in a deep voice, if you want to become the true young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage, you'll have to suppress and dominate everything among the younger generation of Illumination Dragons. The Illumination Dragon lineage has a unique title, Illumination. Now that the clan leader has given up that title, it means that whoever becomes the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage will be the candle of the Illumination Dragon lineage. Su Zimo finally understood. This candle was similar to the titular disciples of Super Sex. In every lifetime there was only a single dragon that could be called candle. In his previous life it was the red-headed ghost. Now that the red-headed ghost had given up the title of candle, his goal was for Su Zimo to fight for it and inherit it. That was the reason why the red-headed ghost told Su Zimo that he would be called Long Mo for now. If Su Zimo could truly suppress the younger generation of the Illumination Dragon lineage, and become the young master of the lineage, he would be the new candle, Longzhu. Chapter 1051. Of course, the clan leader has even higher expectations for you, Long Yan said. Not only does the clan leader want you to become the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage, he also wants you to become the young master of all dragons and be respected by all 5 lineages. At that point, Long Yan shook his head. But how is that possible? The difference is way too great. Even with your bloodline, it's extremely difficult for you to become the young master of the Illumination Dragons, let alone the young master of the 5 lineages. Pausing for a moment, Long Yan sighed. Even obtaining the recognition of the Illumination Dragon lineage is difficult, let alone the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage. Su Zimo remained silent. His bloodline was impure, and he would definitely encounter many difficulties after entering the Dragonbone Valley. However, as the red-headed ghost had said, strength reigns supreme no matter where he went. Su Zimo believed that as long as his body could recover to its original state, he would be able to suppress even dragons of the same cultivation realm. Right then, the sound of clothes fluttering through the air could be heard from afar, mixed with some discussions. Say that Su Zimo is truly lucky. Even a half-martial ancestor couldn't kill him directly. That lad has many treasures on him, such as the creation Qinglian and divine phoenix bone. It's understandable that he can defend against the attack of a half-martial ancestor. However, it's useless. This time round the 9 supersects are all here. No matter how monstrous he is, he'll die. In the blink of an eye, 2 figures with fluttering sleeves traveled with the wind. Their bodies seemed to have fused with the world as a vast might surged over. This might and aura could only be emitted by someone at the conjoint body realm. 2 conjoint body mighty figures. However, the moment the massive might arrived, it was dissipated by Long Yan's aura easily. Long Yan was expressionless as he looked at the 2 incoming people without any intention of making way. Conjoint body mighty figures were definitely domineering existences in Tianhuang mainland. Furthermore, the 2 of them came from one of the 9 major immortal sects, Glass Palace, the strongest sect of the North region. When the 2 conjoint body mighty figures saw that someone was blocking their way, their eyes shone with killing intent. Their first reaction was to charge over and kill the person blocking their way. However, when the 2 conjoint body mighty figures approached, they suddenly stopped in their tracks. Although Long Yan did not take on the form of dragons, the aura he emitted caused the 2 conjoint body mighty figures to shudder. This aura dragons. The 2 conjoint body mighty figures were shocked. Exchanging glances, the 2 of them bowed at the same time with a tacit understanding and smiled. I'm from Glass Palace. Greetings, fellow dragons. Long Yan's expression was ice-cold and he did not say a word. In his eyes, even if the 2 of them were conjoint body mighty figures, their bloodlines were inferior and he could not be bothered with them. Fellow Taoist dragons, after you. The 2 conjoint body mighty figures were not offended and opened a path for Long Yan to pass first, welcoming him with respectful expressions and smiles. They came from Glass Palace and were at the conjoint body realm. They were indeed qualified to do as they pleased in the North region. However, when encountering the divine dragons of the Dragon Bone Valley, they still had to lower their heads. More importantly, the mystical dragon's cultivation seemed to be similar to theirs. This meant that it would be extremely easy for the divine dragon to kill the 2 of them. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, the Rakshasa and Protoss of the primordial 9 races were both at the Jindan realm. However, they could slaughter the paragons of the human race wantonly. At that time there were very few perfected Jindan beings who could fight against the 2 foreign races. Long Yan harumphed and led Su Zimo away. The 2 conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace glanced at Su Zimo, who was a scarlet-haired Een spirit. They merely found it strange but did not say anything. They had never seen Su Zimo before. Even if they had, they would not have recognized him. Right now, Su Zimo had shoulder-length scarlet hair and was covered in scales. Even his cheeks were covered. Even those who had seen him before would not be able to recognize his current appearance. Su Zimo walked past the 2 of them with a cold gaze and a dark expression. Through their conversation, he could vaguely guess that there was a high chance that his presence in the Dragon Burial Valley had been exposed. Otherwise, there would not have been any mention of the 9 super sects arriving together. The 2 of them should be conjoint body mighty figures sent by Glass Palace, and were prepared to head to the Dragon Burial Valley to hunt him down. When he deduced that, Su Zimo's expression naturally turned terrible. The 2 conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace let Long Yan pass before turning to leave. They heaved a sigh of relief internally and sped up, wanting to reach the Dragon Burial Valley as soon as possible. Long Yan did not know about the feud between Su Zimo and Glass Palace as well as the super sections. However, he noticed that something was amiss with Su Zimo's expression and could not help but turn to ask, why? Is there something wrong with the 2 of them? Yes, they should be looking for trouble with me, Su Zimo replied instinctively. Long Yan frowned slightly. Wait here. Before Su Zimo could react, Long Yan said that and turned to leave. He transformed into his dragon's form and chased after the 2 conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace with a menacing expression. Long Yan's speed was too fast. Riding on the clouds, he caught up to the 2 of them before long. Fellow Taoist dragons, you. The two conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace had just greeted each other when they were interrupted by a dragon roar. Roar! The dragon roar reverberated through the world and pierced through metal and stone, releasing a terrifying killing power that pierced the minds of the two mighty figures. Ah! The two conjoint body mighty figures cried out at the same time and covered their ears instinctively. Swoosh! In midair, the divine dragon swung its tail and swept over, causing the void to shatter. The moment one of the conjoint body mighty figures was distracted, it struck him heavily. Poof! The conjoint body mighty figure was reduced into a blood mist by the dragon's tail and died on the spot with his essence spirit destroyed. No matter how good Glass Palace was at body tempering, they could not withstand the burst of a divine dragon. The other conjoint body mighty figure turned and fled without hesitation. However, his speed was far inferior to Long Yan's. Long Yan shuttled through the clouds and caught up to the person in less than 10 breaths. Lowering his head and extending his claws, they shone with a cold glint as he lunged down. Kill! Seeing that he could not escape, the conjoint body mighty figure released a dermic art. Before Su Zimo could see him release it, he was bitten by Long Yan! Exclamation point! A trace of blood flowed down from the corner of Long Yan's mouth. The conjoint body mighty figure's essence spirit was devoured by Long Yan before it could even escape. In the blink of an eye, two conjoint body mighty figures were dead. As a member of the Illumination Dragon lineage, Long Yan had a short temper and was a little impatient. Just now, Su Zimo had witnessed it at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. However, he had not expected that Long Yan would turn around and kill two conjoint body mighty figures without a second word after he spoke casually. Conjoint body mighty figures were almost peak existences in Tianhuang mainland. However, they could not last more than 3 breaths against Long Yan, who had transformed into dragons. That temper! Su Zimo stood on the spot and was dumbfounded when he saw that. Chapter 1052. Although Long Yan did not reveal his attitude, Su Zimo could sense that he was not accepted by this dragon's expert. That was normal. This was the first time Long Yan had met Su Zimo, and he did not know anything about the latter's personality, character, past, strength, or anything else. In Long Yan's eyes, Su Zimo was merely a junior who was lucky and had an impure bloodline that the red-headed ghost took a liking to for some reason. The reason why Long Yan addressed him as young master and explained the situation of the dragons in such detail and patience was mainly because of the red-headed ghost. Therefore, Su Zimo had not expected that a casual sentence from him would cause this dragon's expert to attack for him. Furthermore, Long Yan's methods were so strong and terrifying that it shocked him immensely. That was the strength of the dragons. Back then, there was a reason why the dragons were able to dominate the primordial era and be revered by all races. Human cultivators of the same cultivation realm could not fight against them. It was the same for the paragons of the human race in the Battle of Myriad Phenomenon City, in the ancient battlefield against the Rakshasa and Protoss of the primordial 9 races. Of course, that did not mean that human experts were completely inferior to the primordial 9 races. After all, the human race won the ancient war with great difficulty. The ancient emperors were also existences that could fight against the primordial 9 races. Back then, the human emperor appeared out of nowhere and reversed the entire situation of the ancient war single-handedly, suppressing the experts of the primordial 9 races. What sort of glory was that? In Su Zimo's heart, it was not as if the human race did not have paragons that could fight against the primordial 9 races in this generation. The Yen Beichen and Extreme Fire that he knew were existences that could look down on those of the same cultivation realm. Demoness Ji had received guidance from Fairy Ling Long and obtained the complete legacy of the Pure Maiden Sutra. Her potential was limitless as well. Ming Zhan had obtained the legacy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Given his pure heart and comprehension of Buddhism, he would definitely have a place in the cultivation world as long as he could grow. In fact, even Little Fatty, Shi Jian and the others had their own opportunities and were not to be underestimated. For a moment Su Zimo was filled with thoughts. Right then, Long Yan had already rushed back after killing 2 conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace. "Thank you, Uncle Yan." Su Zimo bowed deeply. Long Yan said in a deep voice, You have to remember that even if you can't become the young master of the Illumination dragon lineage in the future, you're still a dragon. Dragons, we will not tolerate any provocation or bullying from the other races. Su Zimo nodded. Long Yin thought for a moment and continued, of course, when we return to Dragonbone Valley, don't count on me being able to help you with anything. You are surrounded by dragons. If you are bullied, you can only rely on yourself. After that, the two of them continued on their way. At the same time, at the bottom of Dragon Burial Valley, Master, Red-Headed Ghost, cultivators from the 8 supersects are rushing over here with ill intentions. There's a high chance that they're conjoint body mighty figures. Su Zimo's black-haired essence soul also knew what the red-haired Een spirit had experienced. Initially, there were 9 supersects attacking and 2 conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace were killed by Long Yen. There should be 8 more factions. Just in time, the red-headed ghost harumphed coldly and said with a murderous aura, "There are rumors outside that the Dragon Burial Valley is an ominous place. Since that's the case, I'll kill as many as they come." No, the old monk shook his head. You're filled with sins. How can you commit more sins? Furthermore, if the conjoint body mighty figures that came die here, there will be no room for negotiation with the 8 factions. What about Zimo? I'll naturally protect him. The red-headed ghost said proudly. How long can you protect him? The old monk asked instead. Do you want him to stay at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for the rest of his life? He's different from you and me. He has just entered the Void Reversion realm. If he stays in seclusion here all year round, he won't even be able to touch the threshold of the Dharma characteristic realm, let alone the conjoint body realm or the Mahayana realm. For example, Su Zimo was only at mid-stage nascent soul realm after cultivating for 100 years on Howling Moon Mountain, and could not advance any further. However, when he ventured out and underwent a series of trials, he obtained many opportunities. Although he was in extreme danger several times and his life was on the line, he was already at the Void Reversion realm now. It had only been less than a year. Therefore, for a cultivator, hard work and experience were indispensable. What do you want then? The red-headed ghost frowned slightly. Those people don't come with good intentions. You're already half in the coffin, don't torture yourself with your attacks. Although Su Zimo could not tell the old monk's cultivation realm, he could vaguely sense that the old monk was in his twilight years and his blood chi was gradually declining. When cultivators were in their later years and did not have much lifespan left, if they were to attack forcefully, they would expend even more blood chi and lose even more lifespan. It was not only for cultivators. It was the same for mortals as well. However, any old person would be extremely weak, and their strength would not even be comparable to that of a teenager. Not to mention intense movements, even a simple fall could cause one to lose one's life. Although the red-headed ghost's words were unpleasant, Su Zimo could tell that he was concerned for the old monk. The old monk lowered his gaze. Those conjoint body mighty figures are all from supersections. They shouldn't be unreasonable. Reasonable. The red-headed ghost stifled a laugh. Don't talk about reasonable. If they had any dignity left, they wouldn't have come looking for us. The old monk was silent. The red-headed ghost shrugged and said casually, "Up to you. I really don't want to interfere in this matter. In any case, this is a matter of the human race and I'm free. Furthermore, this lad's true body has already headed to the dragons. It's even better if his black-haired essence spirit dies. In that case, this lad will be a pure dragon." Ha 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 ha. The red-headed ghost reared his head in laughter and swayed his tall body as he walked into the depths of the cemetery. Accompanied by the sound of chains, he gradually disappeared into the darkness without a sound. The old monk looked at Su Zimo's black-haired essence spirit and smiled benevolently. "Pack up and follow me." Su Zimo nodded. There was nothing much to pack. He merely picked up his storage bag and was about to leave. But his figure stopped as he turned around to look at the pieces of lotus stems, shattered lotus leaves, and the bare and dim lotus platform that was without any luster on it, and a wave of reluctance suddenly surged into his heart. He did not suffer too great of a loss from this calamity. If the true bodies of the dragons could recover after heading to the Dragonbone Valley to cultivate, it would be a blessing in disguise and their combat strength would be even more terrifying in the future. The only pity was the creation Qinglian. The creation Qinglian had accompanied him for more than 100 years, and he had nurtured her for more than 100 years as well. She had just reached grade 6 and matured when she suffered such a huge blow. It was almost impossible for her to nurture another one. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo decided to collect the shattered and lifeless lotus stems and leaves and put them into his storage bag bit by bit. When he picked up the bare lotus platform, Su Zimo exclaimed softly. On the other hand, the green lotus platform was completely undamaged. There was not a single scratch on it. Although the petals of the lotus platform had fallen, the 54 lotus seeds within were still around. Furthermore, they emitted a faint glow with a hint of vitality. Chapter 1053. Dean was dead and an Ancestor Realm expert attacked to kill Araki Takashi. Araki Takashi fled and no one knew if he was dead or alive. It had only been 3 days since that incident. The entire cultivation world was in an uproar and almost every cultivator, sect and faction was discussing this matter. For some reason, a piece of news gradually spread. Araki Takashi was at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. This day, for uninvited guests arrived in the skies above the Great Qian ruins. An old man stood with his hands behind his back. Although his face was filled with wrinkles, his gaze was extremely sharp. The other cultivator did not look old and seemed to be in his teens. However, there was a vicissitude in his eyes as though he had seen through the world. The third was a middle-aged man with a dignified expression. His eyes shone brightly and he was surrounded by lightning with a rumbling might. The fourth was a female cultivator with a long sword on her back. Her gaze was sharp and she exuded a sharpness that seemed as though she could slice the world into two. There were 4 uninvited guests, 1 old, 1 young, 1 man and 1 woman. The 4 of them were dressed differently and had different auras. However, they had a common point. They were conjoint body mighty figures. The old man was from Heavenly Dipper sect. Although the young man looked young, he was actually thousands of years old and was from Chaos Essence sect. The man was from Zephyr Thunder Palace and the woman was from Sword sect. None of them were nameless to be able to cultivate to this realm. When the 4 of them met, they exchanged pleasantries. So this is the legendary Great Qian Empire. The Chaos Essence sect youth surveyed his surroundings with a bright gaze. Chaos Essence sect was located in the Middle Continent. He had just advanced to the conjoint body realm and this was his first time here. Unfortunately, an empire that was so prosperous 10,000 years ago was destroyed overnight and reduced to ruins. The old man from Heavenly Dipper sect said indifferently. I heard that it was destroyed by an evil dragon? The Chaos Essence sect youth asked. He was already considered a monster incarnate when he entered the conjoint body realm a few years ago. He was not even born when this catastrophe happened. Even the man from Zephyr Thunder Palace and the woman from Sword sect knew little about this matter and only knew about it in legends, let alone him. Among the 4 of them, the old man from Heavenly Dipper sect was the only one who witnessed this catastrophe. That's an ancestor-level evil dragon. Not at the half-martial ancestor level, but a true ancestor level. It's crimson all over and comes from the Illumination dragon lineage. The old man seemed to be reminiscing about something that happened 10,000 years ago. He seemed to still feel a wave of fear as he said in a deep voice, this ancestral evil dragon's fighting prowess was terrifying. It could even fight against an emperor without falling into a disadvantageous position. The youth from the Hunyuan sect said. So what if he's powerful? In the end, he was suppressed by the ancestor of the D family of our Hunyuan sect. The old man from Heavenly Dipper sect chuckled and did not argue. What are you laughing at? Am I wrong? The Hunyuan sect youth frowned. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect pursed his lips. That evil ancestral dragon destroyed the Great Qian Empire single-handedly, destroying 2 super sects, Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery. He killed many conjoint body mighty figures and several Mahayana patriarchs. So, the Hunyuan sect youth continued to ask. The Heavenly Dipper sect elder said, therefore, if the evil dragon and the Dharma overlord hadn't fought to the point where both sides were severely injured, the D clan's patriarch wouldn't have dared to appear, much less succeed. What nonsense! The Hunyuan sect youth's expression turned cold. Old man, be careful with your words. A Mahayana patriarch isn't someone you can criticize. Guys, there's no need to argue over such a trivial matter. The man from Zephyr Thunder Palace said indifferently, we're here for something else. Naturally, we should work together. That's right. The female cultivator of Sword sect nodded. I heard that there's a monk at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley who survived from the 2 major monasteries back then. He's a Mahayana patriarch. If we want to capture Araki Takashi, we'll have to get past him first. Fu, the youth from Hunyuan sect pursed his lips. What's there to fear about an old man whose blood chi is waning and whose lifespan is at its end? Naturally, his words had a double meaning. On the surface, he was talking about the old monk at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, but he was also mocking the old man from Heavenly Dipper sect. TSK, since you immortal sects like to fight so much, why don't you just fight? A sinister laughter sounded from afar. Immediately after, a pitch-black malevolent chi appeared and transformed into a figure in front of the 4 of them. A mighty figure of malevolent earth sect. Beside the mighty figure of malevolent earth sect, the void distorted and a blurry figure appeared. Its aura was terrifying and extremely dangerous. A mighty figure of hidden death sect. In the blink of an eye, 6 conjoint body mighty figures were gathered. Amidba. Right then a Buddhist proclamation sounded. In the distant horizon, a monk in plain robes strode over. Although he seemed to be extremely slow, he arrived before them in the blink of an eye. A mighty figure of formless monastery. All of a sudden, a light breeze blew past, bringing a faint fragrance that smelled very good. However, the 7 mighty figures present frowned and their expressions changed slightly as they held their breaths in unison. A bewitching female cultivator flew through the air. She wore colorful clothes that were extremely beautiful and emitted a fragrance. If one focused their attention, they would realize that the colorful clothes on the female cultivator were moving on their own. A mighty figure of poison sect. Who knew how many poisons were hidden on her body? The conjoint body mighty figures of the 8 super sects were here. Everyone from the middle continent has arrived. Glass Palace is located in the north region and is the closest to this place. Why isn't anyone here yet? The youth from Hunyuan sect asked with a frown. The mighty figure of poison sect laughed coquettishly. I've just received news that 2 conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace were unlucky. For some reason they got into a conflict with the dragons and were killed. All the conjoint body mighty figures present frowned with grim expressions. The mighty figure of poison sect smiled. Everyone, don't worry. I heard that the dragon's expert has already returned to the Dragon Bone Valley, and has nothing to do with this matter. Everyone's expressions relaxed. I heard that the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley is an ominous place. Fellow Taoists of Glass Palace Shore are unlucky to have encountered an ominous event before they arrived. Haha. The youth from Chaos Essence sect laughed. Initially, he wanted to ease the atmosphere and mood. Unexpectedly, the expressions of all the conjoint body mighty figures present changed the moment he said that. Everyone instinctively recalled the many legends about the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. It was said that even conjoint body mighty figures did not manage to survive after entering. Everyone, since we're already here, we can't return empty-handed. The man from Zephyr Thunder Palace said, I heard that the old monk at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley has already lost his blood chi and is on the verge of death. We don't have to worry. That's right. Let's go. The 8 conjoint body mighty figures flashed and whistled through the skies above the Great Qian ruins. Almost in the blink of an eye, the 8 of them had already arrived above the Dragon Burial Valley. The Dragon Burial Valley was filled with a heavy fog. The 8 of them were conjoint body mighty figures and channeled their mental cultivation techniques. Their eyes shone brightly and shone with divine lights. The divine lights entered the thick fog and vanished before long without causing any ripples. The thick fog was formed from the grievous chi and blood chi of countless experts during the catastrophe 10,000 years ago, and could block spirit consciousness and vision. Patrons, you've come from afar. Please forgive me for not being able to welcome you with my old age. Right then, a voice sounded from the bottom of the valley. Chapter 1054. There was indeed someone at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. For 10,000 years, there were endless legends about the Dragon Burial Valley. As some experts entered the Dragon Burial Valley and never returned, the Dragon Burial Valley became even more mysterious and treacherous. Nobody knew what was at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Nobody knew what secrets were hidden in the Dragon Burial Valley either. But today, everything could be revealed to the world. At the thought that there was a high chance that the treasures and secret manuals of the two super sects of Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery were at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, the gazes of the 8 conjoint body mighty figures burned. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect raised his voice. My Dao title is Sui Han. Back then I was fortunate enough to witness the catastrophe 10,000 years ago. May I know which monastery you're from, Master? How should I address you? My Dermic title is Yuan Bei. The old monk's voice sounded from the bottom of the valley in a calm manner. Yuan Bei was once the abbot of Daming Monastery. Later on, he entered seclusion and broke through to the Mahayana realm to become the Grand Elder of Daming Monastery. So it's Patriarch Yuan Bei. I've heard a lot about you. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect said indifferently. The mighty figure of Malevolent Earth sect chuckled. Monk Yuan Bei, to think that you're still alive. Your fellow disciples have already reincarnated. Why aren't you accompanying them? Old monk. Chaos Essence sect's youth shouted. There's no need to beat around the bush. You know very well why we're here. Hand him over. You're already in your twilight years and can't protect him. Although there was a major cultivation realm difference between them, the tone of Chaos Essence sect's youth and the others was not polite at all. Firstly, they had the advantage in numbers. Secondly, Patriarch Yuan Bei was on the verge of death and his blood chi was declining. If a true battle were to break out, he would not be able to hold on for long and would die. Of course, since they had cultivated to this level, none of them were reckless people. The 8 of them arrived at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley. There was heavy fog below and none of them jumped down rashly. Patrons, you're here for my disciple, right? Monk Yuan Bei said indifferently. I already know about what happened in the Dao inheritance ground. However, I don't know what he did wrong to cause 8 conjoint body patrons to come out at the same time. The youth of Chaos Essence sect said coldly, Araki Takashi is bloodthirsty. He killed the paragons of the human race wantonly in the Dao inheritance ground and deserves to die. Fighting and killing are commonplace in the world of cultivators. Even if there is a disagreement, there are many who fight to the death. Monk Yuan Bei said, since when does a fight between cultivators of the same cultivation realm require the elders of the sect to step in? Don't tell me that the current cultivation world doesn't even have such rules. Even though Monk Yuan Bei was at the end of his lifespan, he was still a Mahayana patriarch and his tone was solemn. Even though the 8 conjoint body mighty figures stood above the Dragon Burial Valley and were 100,000 feet away, they could still feel waves of pressure surging towards them. To be fair, if Su Zimo was backed by the 9 immortal sects, the 7 demonic sects, or one of the 6 Buddhist sects, this situation would not have happened. Take Di'in for example. Although he was domineering and invincible, the titular disciples of the major sects would usually not take the initiative to provoke him. That was because Di'in was backed by Hunyuan sect. The reason why there was a situation where many titular disciples surrounded Su Zimo in the Dao inheritance ground. At the end of the day, it was because Su Zimo did not have any backing. It was fine if such a paragon, such a monster incarnate, was killed. It would not trigger any experts to come out of seclusion and it would not affect anything. Furthermore, Su Zimo truly had way too many treasures on him. However, none of the major sects and titular disciples expected Su Zimo to be so terrifying and domineering that he stepped on their corpses to establish his Dao heart and shock Tianhuang mainland. Patriarch Yuan Bei, you're wrong. Suddenly, the old man of Heavenly Dipper sect laughed. The feud between Araki Takashi and the titular disciples is not a fight between those of the same cultivation realm. It's a fight between the foreign race and the human race. Araki Takashi is of a foreign race and slaughtered the paragons of the human race in the Dao inheritance ground. Everyone has the right to kill him. The female cultivator of sword sect said coldly as well, old monk, Daming Monastery was once one of the Buddhist monasteries as well. To think that you would take in a foreign race as a disciple before your death. You're already senile. If I were you, I would place righteousness before family and kill this lad personally to console the innocent paragons of the human race who died. The man of Zephyr Thunder Palace was aggressive as well. Those who are not of our race will definitely have ulterior motives. The mighty figure of Formless Monastery hummed softly, "Fellow Taoist Yuan Bei, please hand over Araki Takashi. As for the legacy of Daming Monastery, if you trust me, Formless Monastery will pass it down for you." At the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo stayed beside Monk Yuan Bei. When he heard that, a mocking look flashed through his eyes. Before he could even say anything, the monk of Formless Monastery was already impatient and revealed his greedy and ugly side. "Patrons, if you're here to kill foreign races, please return," Monk Yuan Bei said indifferently. "My disciple's essence spirit is that of a human. However, his body is mixed with the bloodline of a foreign race. But now, his body is destroyed and he's only left with an essence spirit. If he reconstructs his body, he'll be a true human." When he heard that, a look of realization flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Apart from allowing his body to recover, the reason why the old monk agreed to let the scarlet-haired Een spirit head to the Dragon Bone Valley should be for his future. As the old monk said, as long as he reconstructed his body, he would be a human. From this day forth, no sect, faction or cultivator in Tianhuang mainland could use that to attack him. Coupled with the protection of him and extreme fire of 100 Refinement sect and the others, his situation in the cultivation world would be much better, and he would no longer have to hide. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others frowned and their expressions turned ugly. They knew that given Patriarch Yuan Bei's status and level, as well as the fact that he was a member of the Buddhist monasteries, there was no way he would lie about this. In other words, Su Zimo's body was indeed crippled. In that case, the banner of slaying demons that the 8 of them were initially using was completely useless. Then, he has to give us an explanation for killing so many titular disciples in the Tao inheritance ground. The man from Zephyr Thunder Palace said in a deep voice. "What explanation?" Monk Yuan Bei asked instead. "The titular disciples of your sect tried to kill others but were killed instead. What explanation do you want?" "Old monk, we won't return empty-handed. If you don't hand him over, don't blame us for barging into your Dragon Burial Valley." Chaos Essence Sect's youth's eyes lit up as he took a step forward and stood at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley with a murderous aura. "I don't have much lifespan left," Monk Yuan Bei said indifferently. "However, if you dare to take half a step into the Dragon Burial Valley, I'll be able to bury the 8 of you at the bottom of the valley even if I have to risk my life. To be able to cultivate to the Mahayana realm, even if they were from the Buddhist monasteries, their hands would be stained with endless blood. Mahayana patriarchs were all people who kept their word." Chaos Essence Sect's youth and the others frowned and froze on the spot. For a moment, no one dared to advance rashly and provoke a patriarch in his twilight years. "A bunch of trash." A cold voice sounded out without warning. Not too far away in the void, a crack suddenly appeared and a figure walked out, exuding a powerful and wild aura. Chapter 1055. At the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley, the expressions of many conjoint body mighty figures changed. Spatial teleportation. This method of tearing through space and teleporting was one of the divine powers that only Mahayana patriarchs could control. The aura of the cultivator before them was terrifying. Although he had indeed surpassed the conjoint body realm, he did not seem to have reached the true Mahayana realm. Half-martial ancestor. The news of a half-martial ancestor killing Araki Takashi 3 days ago flashed through the minds of the old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others. Right then, Chaos Essence Sect's youth hurried forward and bowed, saying in a deep voice, "Greetings, Elder D Fan." True enough. A half-martial ancestor of the D clan. Everyone understood. D Fan swept his cold gaze across the old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others with an endless might. Conjoint body mighty figures were almost the peak experts of the cultivation world. However, they still had to bow down to half-martial ancestors. It was clear that half-martial ancestor D Fan had already grasped the power of divine powers. Otherwise, he would not have been able to tear through space and teleport over. Greetings, half-martial ancestor D. Fan. Although the old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others were called trash by D. Fan, they did not dare to show any displeasure and stepped forward one after another, cupping their fists and bowing. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Su Zimo looked at Monk Yuanbei beside him with a worried expression. Of course, the best situation would be to intimidate the other party without even making a move. But now that D. Fan had arrived, the situation was clearly tilted. Given Monk Yuanbei's current condition and his blood chi was waning, even if he attacked with his full strength, he might not be able to defend against a peak half-martial ancestor. D. Fan said coldly, "You guys are so scared of an old monk who's at the end of his life. How embarrassing." "Disperse," D. Fan hollered. The thick fog that surrounded the valley began to spread to the side and thinned. The ancient temple at the bottom of the valley could be vaguely seen. Indeed, that method had exceeded Su Zimo's understanding. That was a divine power. Fufu, a half-martial ancestor attacking a void reversion, and you still have the cheek to chase after us after missing a single strike. You're really embarrassing. Indeed, there's nothing good about the D clan. A sneer sounded from the backyard of the ancient temple, filled with mockery and disdain. Hearing this voice, Su Zimo let out a sigh of relief. Following the sound of this voice, the fog that was about to disperse suddenly recovered and continued to stack together, isolating the bottom of the valley from the top. D. Fan narrowed his eyes. Apart from Monk Yuanbei, there was actually someone else at the bottom of the valley. "How dare a coward like you mock me?" D. Fan sneered and said, "Who are you? Tell me your name. I, D. Fan, will not kill nameless people." "Little brat, how dare you ask for my name?" The voice from the bottom of the valley rang out. D. Fan flew into a rage. As a half-martial ancestor, it was simply an extraordinary humiliation for him to be insulted like this. D. Fan leaped and was about to charge into the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Clang, clang, clang. At this moment, the sound of heavy chains came from the depths of the valley. Whoosh! Before D. Fan's figure fell, a black shadow darted out of the thick fog and attacked D. Fan. Everyone focused their gazes. It was a chain as thick as an arm. It was rusty, but there was nothing special about it. Shatter! D. Fan stood in midair and summoned a dark golden truncheon. 6 beams of light shone brightly on it, and it was filled with a terrifying aura as it smashed towards the chain. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. That truncheon looked like a Khanate mighty figure dermic weapon. However, in reality, it was already filled with the aura of a divine power. This meant that the dermic weapon was evolving into a dermic treasure. The weapons of Mahayana patriarchs were dermic treasures. Dermic treasures could withstand the power of divine powers and were terrifying. They could shatter dermic weapons with ease. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the chain and truncheon collided with a deafening bang and sparks flew everywhere. The entire space trembled and a tremendous power burst forth, tearing the void apart. D. Fan's figure paused in midair. The entire space and time seemed to have stopped. "Elder D. Fan, let me help you." Chaos Essence Sex Youth was the first to react. He strode forward and reached out with his gigantic hand, grabbing towards the thick chain that extended out of the fog. D. Fan's back was facing him. If he could see D. Fan's expression, he would definitely regret attacking. Poof! Suddenly, D. Fan opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Blood drained from his face and a blood mist burst forth from his body as he fell backwards. Many conjoint body mighty figures present were shocked. A half-martial ancestor had actually suffered such a serious injury from a single collision. Ha 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 ha. A loud laugh sounded from the bottom of the valley. "Little brat of the Emperor clan, how dare you come out and embarrass yourself with that little bit of strength?" D. Fan did not want to refute at all. Without hesitation, he retreated and tore through the void with his backhand. In a flash, he disappeared into the darkness instantly. The tear in the void gradually closed. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others looked at Chaos Essence Sex Youth instinctively. At that moment, Chaos Essence Sex Youth's palm had just touched the gigantic chain. When he saw what was happening around him, it was already too late for him to stop. Clang! The chain trembled and collided with Chaos Essence Sex Youth's palm. Exclamation point! Under the gazes of a few conjoint body mighty figures, Chaos Essence Sex Youth's palm was turned into a blood mist by the chain. The immense power spread along his arm. Poof! 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 Chaos Essence Sex Youth's arm was ruptured by the residual power of the chain and snapped inch by inch. Ah! Chaos Essence Sex Youth shrieked and retreated, splattering endless blood along the way. Clang! 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 The chain chased after him with a murderous aura as though it was sentient. Chaos Essence Sex Youth was scared pale. Against the chain, he had no strength to resist at all. Boom! The chain smashed down and the ground trembled, smashing Chaos Essence Sex Youth into two with flesh and blood splattering everywhere. Conjoint body mighty figures could regrow a severed arm. But now, Chaos Essence Sex Youth's body and essence spirit were shattered by the chain and he was deader than dead. A conjoint body mighty figure was smashed to death by a chain and his essence spirit was destroyed. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others were so scared that they did not dare to move. They felt their hair stand on end and their limbs turn cold. They were afraid that if they acted rashly, they would be killed by the chain. However, for some reason the chain suddenly paused. Thereafter, under the horrified gazes of the old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others, it gradually retracted and disappeared into the thick fog. Everyone panted heavily as though they had been pardoned. They had never felt the way they did earlier on. Death was so close to them. As long as the chain continued its pursuit, the few of them would not be able to escape death. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Monk Yuanbei reached out and grabbed the red-headed ghost's chain back. Old bald monk, why are you stopping me? Your tricks are useless. To deal with this group of people who bully the weak and fear the strong, we have to kill. The red-headed ghost said coldly. Monk Yuanbei said, it's enough to intimidate them. If we really kill them all, Dragon Burial Valley won't be peaceful in the future. Chapter 1056. Patrons, Zimo is the only successor of Daming Monastery, Monk Yuanbei said in a deep voice. His body is already destroyed and there are no traces of demons on him. You guys can return. Farewell. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others exchanged glances without any hesitation. They were already extremely lucky to be able to survive under that terrifying chain. How would they dare to continue being impudent? Hold on. Right then, another voice sounded from the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. It was incomparably arrogant. It was the expert who was mocking D. Fan just now. There was a high chance that it was the owner of the chain. The old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others shuddered and froze on the spot, not daring to move. Given the strength of the owner of the chain, there was no way they could escape if he wanted to kill them. When Araki Takashi enters the cultivation world in the future, I won't interfere in fights of the same cultivation realm. If he's defeated and dies, it's because he's not skilled enough and is inferior to others. Suddenly, the tone at the bottom of the valley changed and was murderous. However, if anyone still wants to bully the weak, don't blame me for attacking. The hearts of the old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others skipped a beat. If he was not wrong, the person at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley should be a Mahayana patriarch. If a Mahayana patriarch were to seek revenge in a frenzy, even the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries would not be able to withstand it. Of course, the old man of Heavenly Dipper sect and the others did not dare to disobey and agreed immediately. Actually, in their hearts this time round was not completely fruitless. At the very least they had proven something. Although Araki Takashi was still alive, the number 1 monster incarnate of history was already a thing of the past. They had heard of the rumors over the years. What Araki Takashi relied on the most was a terrifying body that could even suppress pure-blooded ferocious beasts. But now that body had been destroyed. Patriarch Yuanbei said that there were no traces of demons on this lad. This meant that the divine phoenix bone that Araki Takashi once possessed was crippled as well. Furthermore, that lad's destiny dermic weapon, the creation Qinglian, was also destroyed by half-martial ancestor D. Fan. Many cultivators in the Dao inheritance ground saw it. His physical body, divine phoenix bone, natal dermic artifact, and many of the trump cards that Araki Takashi had relied on the most had been destroyed. Even if Araki Takashi didn't die, he had already fallen from grace. He was no longer a threat to them. Even if Araki Takashi could reconstruct his body, he would only have the combat strength of an ordinary void reversion. Any paragon of their sect could kill him. The fact that the conjoint body mighty figures of the 9 major sects charged into the Dragon Burial Valley, only to return in defeat and lose 3 conjoint body mighty figures naturally attracted countless guesses. But soon news began to spread. Araki Takashi was not dead, but he had lost his physical body and divine phoenix bone. The creation Qinglian had shattered. Araki Takashi's other identity was the only successor of Daming Monastery, and he had a Mahayana patriarch backing him as his Tao protector. The Mahayana patriarch did not have much lifespan left and could not live for long. To think that the battle of the Tao inheritance ground would end in such a manner. That's right. A total of 8 titular disciples died. Including Araki Takashi, there are 9 of them. Araki Takashi isn't dead. I heard that his essence spirit was preserved. Do you think that Araki Takashi with only an essence spirit left is any different from dying? Sigh, what a pity. He was hailed as the #1 monster incarnate of history, and stepped on the corpses of many titular disciples to establish his Tao heart and impart martial arts to all living beings. In the end, he was still destroyed by a half-martial ancestor and ended up in such a tragic state. It's truly a pity. For a long time after that, the cultivation world was discussing this matter. The cultivation world was in an uproar. However, Su Zimo's scarlet-haired Yin spirit had already followed Long Yen to their destination, the Dragon Bone Valley. Stepping foot into this place again, Su Zimo had a different feeling. After passing through the vast sea of bones, he arrived at the tall mountain peak that he had been to before. Long Yen waved his sleeves gently and swept up Su Zimo's scarlet-haired Yin spirit. He soared into the air and crossed the mountain peak, speeding forward. Su Zimo looked down. Behind this mountain there was an ancient forest, as well as many towering mountains. Everywhere was filled with a primordial aura. Back then, he thought that he had already entered the Dragon Bone Valley. In reality, the mountain peak that he and Night Spirit ascended was only the periphery of the Dragon Bone Valley. After a while, Su Zimo was invigorated. Not far ahead, towering mountains rose and fell into the clouds, forming a long and tall mountain range that was extremely spectacular. From afar, the mountain range resembled a divine dragon that was hibernating on the ground with its head and tail connected. In the middle of the mountain range was a gigantic valley. It was extremely vast and one could not see the end of it. Looking down, one could clearly see that there were about 6 regions in the valley with different colors. There was red, green, yellow, gold, silver, and gray. Among them, the green region occupied the largest area while the gray region was the smallest, and was located in a corner of the valley. The other 4 regions were similar. Right then Long Yen said, although the 6 dragon lineages belong to dragons, there is a clear distinction between them. The largest region in the green region is the habitat of the blue dragon lineage. Previously, he had heard from Long Yen that the blue dragon lineage inherited the most azure dragon bloodline. Therefore, generally speaking, the blue dragon lineage was the strongest. The red region is our illumination dragon lineage. Long Yen pointed below. As for the gray region, it's the mixed dragon lineage. If your mount can transform into a WM, you'll be qualified to enter that region. Su Zimo nodded and continued observing. It was his first time here and everything he saw was extremely novel. This was a civilization of the primordial era. Unlike the human race, this was a civilization that was once glorious and dominated Tianhuang mainland. The 6 regions formed a circle. There was a large empty space in the middle with many ancient buildings. The most obvious thing was a thick stone pillar that soared into the skies in the middle. It was ancient and mysterious. No one knew how long it had existed, and it exuded endless vicissitudes of life. There was a divine dragon carved on the stone pillar. It was lifelike and exuded an endless might. Su Zimo merely took a single glance and felt a sense of worship. The strangest thing was that there were 5 claws on the abdomen of the divine dragon. Normally speaking, dragons had 4 claws on their abdomens. This was the first time Su Zimo had seen a 5-clawed divine dragon. Furthermore, it was on this ancient and thick stone pillar. This is the ancestral dragon divine pillar, Long Yen said in a deep voice, When dragons reach a certain age or a certain cultivation realm equivalent to the Dharma characteristic realm of the human race, they will come here to receive the baptism of the ancestral dragon and awaken their innate divine powers. What's with the 5-clawed divine dragon on it? Su Zimo asked curiously. Normal dragons have 4 claws under their abdomens, Long Yen said. Only the kings of dragons and those with the strongest bloodlines will be able to nurture a 5th claw. In this generation, the blue dragon lineage has already given birth to a 5-clawed divine dragon. If nothing goes wrong, that blue dragon will be the young master of the 5 dragons lineages. Chapter 1057. Many of the important locations of dragons are in this area in the middle. The primordial divine spring that you're about to recuperate in is also here. Long Yen pointed to the area beneath him. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to an extremely wide stone platform not far away. There were 2 divine dragons fighting on it, and each time they collided, the void would tremble. Both divine dragons were covered in wounds. When their claws slashed down, a terrifying wound would appear on their bodies and dragon scales would fall one after another. The entire protruding stone platform was filled with blood. Some of it had already dried and dyed the stone platform dark brown. The battle between the 2 divine dragons was extremely tragic, as though they had a deep grudge. That's the dragon blood battlefield. Long Yen had a grim expression and said in a deep voice, you have to remember that among dragons, no matter which dragon vein you're in, conflicts can break out at any time. Elders of the dragons have never interfered with the conflicts between juniors. In fact, they even encourage it. As long as your cultivation realms are the same, you can fight at any time. Su Zimo nodded. This was very different from the cultivation world. In the sects and factions of cultivation, they emphasized mutual love and support, and would not encourage killing. Even if there were true conflicts, they would be at fixed locations and cultivators could not fight at any time. If that was the case, the entire sect would be in chaos. However, the civilization of dragons encouraged killing and clashing among their own race. In this kind of constant fighting and killing, one could temper one's body, mind, and spirit, and make oneself even stronger. Long Yen said, of course, essence spirit secret skills are not allowed to be activated or conjured in the form of dragons when conflicts break out in these habitats. Once essence spirit secret skills were activated and dragons were conjured, it meant a life and death battle. Long Yen pointed to the battlefield where the 2 divine dragons were fighting not far away. If you want a life and death battle, you'll have to go to the dragon blood battlefield. Once you're on the battlefield, life and death don't matter. Su Zimo frowned slightly and asked, dragons are rare and it's extremely difficult for them to reproduce. Why aren't they stopping such life and death battles? Long Yen said indifferently, if a race is afraid of death and cowardly, no matter how many of its people it produces, it will only be enslaved by other races. Su Zimo secretly nodded. In the ancient times, if it weren't for those human powerhouses who were fearless in the face of death, the human race wouldn't have been able to escape the fate of being enslaved by the other races. I'll take you back to Zhu dragons first. As Long Yen spoke, he swept up Su Zimo's scarlet-haired Een spirit and descended towards the crimson region not too far away. In the habitat of the candle dragons, the temperature had clearly risen. Every building was engraved with many dragon-shaped flames, and they were abnormally lively. Although this matter was ordered by the clan chief, it is still something that the elders must agree to. Long Yen said, follow me to meet the elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage later. Even if you suffer any grievances, don't spout nonsense. Bear with it and just listen from the side. Su Zimo nodded. After all, the red-headed ghost had left the dragons for 10,000 years. Even if he was still alive, his words would not carry much weight in the Illumination Dragon lineage. Su Zimo condensed a dermic power body for the time being and wore green robes before following Long Yen into the main hall. At the front of the main hall, 3 old men sat on the high seats in the middle. They did not look young with gray hair and beards. However, every single one of them was hale and hearty with bright eyes. The 3 old men exuded a faint might from their brows, and it was clear that they were people of high status. On both sides of the main hall sat 2 rows of dragons. There were both men and women, and there were more than 10 of them. They looked younger and were of similar seniority to Long Yan. Long Yan greets the 3 elders. Long Yan went forward and bowed. These 3 are the 2nd, 3rd and 4th elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage. At the same time, Long Yan whispered to Su Zimo behind him. Where is he? Since he's still alive, why didn't he return with you? 3rd elder in the middle asked indifferently with a stern expression. The clan leader said that it's not time yet. Long Yan repeated the excuse given to him by the red-headed ghost and continued. Also, the clan leader said that he no longer occupies the title of Illumination and will leave it to the juniors to fight for. In that case, our Illumination Dragon lineage will have to choose a young master as well. That's right. For this generation, the candidates for the young masters of the Blue Dragon, Horn Dragon, Winged Dragon and Hornless Dragon have already been decided. Our Illumination Dragon is the only one that hasn't been decided yet. The men and women in the main hall began to discuss. 4th elder looked benevolent as he looked at Long Yan and asked with concern, "How's Long Ran? Have you recovered from your injuries?" Long Ran was the name of the red-headed ghost. The clan leader seems to be in a good condition. Thank you for your concern, 4th elder, Long Yan replied. Su Zimo had a much better impression of 4th elder. Out of so many dragons, the only one who truly cared about the red-headed ghost was 4th elder. What's with the young man beside you? 3rd elder asked. Long Yan said, 3rd elder, this lad's name is Long Mo. The bloodline of the clan leader flows in his body and he is treated as his son. Now he wants me to bring him back. His essence spirit is injured. Why is his body gone as well? 4th elder could tell with a single glance that Su Zimo was only left with his essence spirit, and was only condensed from dermic powers without a physical body. Long Yan took out Su Zimo's body and said, his body was crippled by a half-martial ancestor of the human race and is no longer alive. The clan leader wants him to return and head to the primordial divine spring to recuperate. Sensing the bloodline aura of Su Zimo, Elder 2 frowned with displeasure. Immediately, someone stood out from the main hall and said coldly, this person's bloodline is extremely mixed. Even if he has Long Ran's bloodline, he can't be considered as part of the Illumination Dragon lineage. A bloodline like that can only be considered as a remnant beast. He's not even qualified to enter this place and he wants to recuperate in the primordial divine spring? How is that possible? It's rare to get a spot to recuperate in the primordial divine spring. We can't give it to a bastard like him. The words of some dragons turned more intense. Long Yan glared and surveyed his surroundings, shouting, he's the son of the clan leader. How is he not qualified? Notwithstanding the fact that he's a bastard, even if he's Long Yan who died prematurely, he can't enter the primordial divine spring just because he wants to. One of the dragon race members sneered. Su Zimo had once heard the red-headed ghost mention Yan. It seemed like he was right. Long Yan should be the son of the red-headed ghost. Unfortunately, he died prematurely. He did not know what this had to do with the catastrophe 10,000 years ago. Another dragon lady said, even if he's the son of Long Ran, he's not the young master of our Illumination Dragon lineage. What right does he have to enter the primordial divine spring? These dragons were extremely unwilling to accept an outsider with a mixed bloodline like him, let alone allow him to recuperate in the primordial divine spring. The situation Su Zimo was facing was even more difficult than he had imagined. Even if the red-headed ghost returned personally, he might not be able to overcome everyone's objections and allow Su Zimo to enter the primordial divine spring, let alone Long Yan. Chapter 1058. Long Yan looked at the 3 elders and said in a deep voice, the clan leader instructed that we have to bring Long Mo to the primordial divine spring to recuperate. Elders, please allow it. Heis. Elder 4 sighed with a hint of sorrow in his eyes as he said softly, he's devastated after losing his son and wife. For the past 10,000 years, he has been staying in that abyss and I don't know what kind of torture he endured. Since he thinks so highly of this lad, let's agree to his request. Elder 3 seemed to have recalled some past events as well and nodded with a lamenting expression. Elder 2 was still frowning. However, when he noticed the attitudes of the two elders beside him, he closed his eyes and acquiesced to the matter. Long Yin was overjoyed. He urged in a soft voice, "Quick, thank the three elders." "Thank you, elders." Su Zimo went forward and bowed in gratitude. Thereafter he looked at Long Yen and reminded softly, "Uncle Yen, there's still Solitary Cloud. I haven't told the three elders yet. I can't care about him anymore." Long Yen shook his head. "How can I care about him when I'm already under so much pressure to send you into the primordial divine spring? Besides, he's not related to the clan leader." Su Zimo frowned. In their eyes, Solitary Cloud was just an irrelevant person. However, in Su Zimo's eyes, Solitary Cloud was someone he could not abandon. "Three elders." Turning around, Su Zimo suddenly said, "I have a favor to ask of you. Elders, please allow it." Long Yan's expression changed. "What is it?" Elder 4 looked at Su Zimo with an extremely kind gaze and asked with a smile, "My mount is a W-arm. In order to save me this time round, it was severely injured and was on the verge of death. Elders, please allow this W-arm to follow me to the primordial divine spring to recuperate." Su Zimo had to say this, no matter how great the pressure ahead was. The second elder, whose eyes were originally closed, suddenly opened his eyes. Two rays of divine light shot out from his pair of dragon eyes and landed on Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo's dermic powers and physical body were on the verge of collapse. The third elder's face also sank. Even the fourth elder's expression stiffened, as he frowned slightly with a troubled expression. What is he trying to do? He hasn't even truly returned to our Illumination Dragon lineage, and he's already trying to rebel. Even a WRM isn't qualified to enter the primordial divine spring, let alone a WR. You don't know what's good for you. If even a ferocious dragon could enter the primordial divine spring, then all of us would be qualified. The primordial divine spring would have dried up long ago. A huge commotion broke out in the crowd. Long Yen sighed and looked at Su Zimo with disappointment. He knew nothing about Su Zimo. However, in his eyes, Su Zimo's current performance was that of a young man who did not know when to advance or retreat and could not see the situation clearly. His performance is way too poor. I really don't know what the clan leader sees in him. Long Yen had a preconceived notion of Su Zimo, and was increasingly disappointed the more he thought about it. Long Mo, your request is absolutely impossible. The third elder shook his head slowly. The fourth elder wanted to say something but hesitated. He wanted to help plead but did not know where to start. This matter was indeed against the rules of the clan. Su Zimo had already expected this. With a calm expression, he said in a deep voice, "Since that's the case, I'll give the opportunity to head to the primordial divine spring to my mount." "Ridiculous!" the third elder hollered. The second elder's expression turned cold as he said slowly, "Junior, what do you think the primordial divine spring is? You can give it away just because you want to. I'm telling you now, even you aren't qualified to head to the primordial divine spring." Long Yen chased this arrogant and ignorant person out. He's not allowed to set foot in the Dragon Bone Valley for the rest of his life. Otherwise, he'll be killed without mercy. "Please show mercy, second elder." Long Yen knelt on the ground hurriedly. No matter how unhappy he was with Su Zimo, he had to do his best to complete the red-headed ghost's request. "Second brother." The fourth elder could not bear it and called out softly. The second elder waved his hand with a cold expression. "There's no room for negotiation. If not for Long Ran, I would have attacked and killed him long ago." Su Zimo lowered his head slightly with a calm expression. Even if he knew the outcome, he had to stand out and fight for Solitary Cloud's survival. Even if he was chased out today and lost the chance to repair his body, he would not regret it. "Red-headed ghost, I've disappointed you," Su Zimo lamented internally. The reason why the red-headed ghost made such an arrangement was mainly because he valued Su Zimo's potential and wanted him to become a dragon. If he truly had any conflict with the dragons in the future, with this true body around, it would at least be alleviated. Unfortunately, the dragons still could not accept him. Su Zimo said indifferently, "Since you guys don't welcome me, I won't disturb you any further. Farewell." The life preservation elixir could only keep Solitary Cloud alive for a month, and now there were only a few days left. He had to leave this place as soon as possible and find another way. Wait! Right then, an old voice sounded from the back of the hall. Immediately after, a strange sound could be heard. Clang! 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 Then a stooped silhouette flashed out from the back of the hall. His hair was white, and his face was full of wrinkles. He was holding a fiery red walking stick in his hand. Then he walked over in a trembling manner. The strange sound was the sound of the old man's walking stick striking the ground. Grand Elder! Upon seeing the person who had arrived, the dragons who were initially seated in the hall, including the 3 elders of the dragon tribe, immediately rose to their feet and greeted him respectfully. Yes, the Grand Elder paused with every step he took and replied. His eyes were turbid as his gaze shifted to Suzimo, who was not far away. For some reason, Suzimo felt as though he had no secrets to speak of after the Grand Elder's gaze landed on him, as though the latter could see through him completely. Child, stay behind, the Grand Elder said. Many dragons were shocked. The Grand Elder's status in the Illumination Dragon lineage was unique and incomparable. Even the clan leader had to discuss many things with the Grand Elder. The fact that the Grand Elder said that meant that no one could chase Suzimo away. Longyan was delighted and said hurriedly, "Thank you, Grand Elder." As he said that, he pushed Suzimo and urged the latter to thank him quickly. Suzimo met the Grand Elder's gaze and suddenly said, "My mount is a double-worm. I have to follow him." "Yes, you guys can head to the primordial divine spring together," the Grand Elder said indifferently. The dragons were in an uproar. First Elder 2 was shocked and his eyes were filled with disbelief. In his opinion, this kind of thing was simply a fantasy story. Grand Elder, this is against the rules. Grand Elder, shouldn't you reconsider? Instantly a commotion broke out in the hall. Dong! Suddenly the Grand Elder's walking stick slammed onto the ground and a dull thud echoed through the entire hall. In the blink of an eye, everything fell silent. None of the dragons dared to make a sound. The Grand Elder hunched his back and his turbid eyes shifted slowly across the hall as he said slowly, "This is my decision. Who has any objections?" The dragons remained silent. None of them dared to meet the Grand Elder's gaze. Chapter 1059. Longyan was stunned. He truly had not expected that this matter would alarm the Grand Elder of the Illumination Dragon lineage, who had not appeared for a long time. Furthermore, more importantly, the Grand Elder had made the same decision as the clan leader and truly allowed Suzimo to bring a double-worm into the primordial divine spring to recuperate. "Thank you, Grand Elder." The dragons fell silent. Only Suzimo bowed and thanked him with a calm expression. That was the condition for him to join the dragons to begin with. At that moment, none of the dragons in the hall could understand why the Grand Elder made such a decision. It was only many years later that many dragons realized what a terrifying monster incarnate their decision today had left behind for the dragons. Compared to this monster incarnate, the primordial divine spring was not worth mentioning. Longyan left with Suzimo. Although the dragons could not tell from their expressions, they were indignant and dispersed as well. In the blink of an eye, only the 4 elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage were left in the hall. First, Long Emo has Long Rant's bloodline. Although it's not pure, it's nothing much to let him enter the primordial divine spring to recuperate. Elder 2 frowned. However, that lad doesn't know his limits if he wants that double-worm to enter the primordial divine spring as well. The Grand Elder smiled gently and asked instead, "Fourth, what do you think?" Although Long Emo did not grow up in our environment, his temperament is similar to that of dragons. In the conversation earlier on, he revealed his courage, fearlessness, hot-bloodedness and neither servile nor overbearing. Apart from Long Ran, I like him personally as well. Elder 4 said in a deep voice, "I heard from Long Ran that this lad was originally a human. After so many years, he hasn't been tainted by the sly ways of the human race. That's rare." The Grand Elder said, "Third, tell me about it as well." Elder 3 pondered for a moment and said, "I'm fine with it. I believe in Long Rant's judgment. Since he made this arrangement, he should have his reasons. However, pausing for a moment, Elder 3 changed the topic. This lad was a human in the past after all. It's still unknown if he can truly join the dragons. First, your decision is somewhat risky. According to our original decision, we still have to test him. Yes. The first elder nodded and looked at the second elder. He patted his shoulder and said, "Second elder, you said that he didn't know his limits when he let that fierce dragon enter the primordial divine spring. But actually it was precisely because he made this request that I truly felt at ease, and let him head to the primordial divine spring." The second elder was slightly taken aback. The great elder explained, "If this lad ignores the ferocious dragon in order to repair his body, or feigns civility with us, I really don't dare to take him in. Just as you're worried, he used to be a human after all, and he's so shrewd and cunning. Who knows if we're raising an ingrate by taking him in? Who knows if he will bite us one day?" The second elder seemed to have understood something and revealed a pondering expression. The first elder continued, "But the fact that he dared to take such a risk and make such a seemingly reckless request proves that he is a very loyal person. He will definitely remember our kindness to him. No wonder." Third and fourth elder were enlightened. The first elder smiled with a smug look in his eyes, as though he had picked up a treasure. The second elder smiled as well. "First, it's rare to see you so happy. Do you think so highly of this lad? Don't forget, his bloodline is impure. You guys don't know much about the outside world," the first elder said. "Even though I'm in seclusion all day, I've heard about some of the major events outside. Do you guys know what that lad did in the cultivation world earlier on?" "What?" The three elders were curious and asked. He killed all the titular disciples of the 8 super sects of the human race single-handedly." The first elder's words were shocking. The 3 elders' faces were filled with surprise. The fourth elder said, "No wonder I sensed a sharp killing intent and invincible aura from that lad. So he possesses such terrifying combat strength. No wonder a half-martial ancestor would attack him." The third elder nodded. The titular disciples of the super sects of the human race are not easy to deal with. They can already fight against us dragons of the same cultivation realm. Actually, it's nothing much. The second elder was indifferent. If the paragons of the younger generation of dragons were to head out, they would be able to suppress the titular disciples of the human race as well. Foo-foo. Suddenly, the first elder laughed. "First, what are you laughing at?" the second elder asked. The first elder said faintly, "Have you guys heard of the catastrophe that happened in Myriad Phenomenon City, more than 100 years ago?" "I've heard of it," the second elder nodded. "I heard that some treasures appeared and the Protoss and Rakshasa race sent their clansmen and paragons in. To think that they would be killed by a monster incarnate of the human race, and encounter a massive catastrophe." At that point, the second elder's expression changed as he asked, "First, are you saying that this lad is that monster incarnate of the human race back then?" "That's him." The first elder nodded. "Thus." The 3 elders gasped slightly. They were well aware of the strength of the Protoss and Rakshasa race. Even the dragons might not be able to win against those 2 foreign races. The third elder frowned. "He's severely injured this time round. I wonder how much of his combat strength he'll be able to recover after his injuries are healed." "That's right. After all, he'll lose many methods of the human race. Coupled with the fact that his bloodline is impure, his combat strength will probably be greatly reduced." The second elder nodded as well. Suddenly, the fourth elder asked, "First, do you intend to make him the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage?" The first elder was non-committal. "It doesn't matter if I'm willing. The key is for him to prove himself. Among us dragons, whoever has the biggest fist will be respected. As an outsider, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for him to integrate into the dragons within a short period of time." The fourth elder was a little worried. Suddenly, a sly look flashed through the first elder's eyes. "That's why I asked that Wuxia to head to the primordial divine spring with him. Apart from doing him a favor, I also wanted to incite the displeasure and resentment of the juniors of the dragons. Once he comes out of the primordial divine spring, he'll definitely be in trouble. This is also a test for him." We'll know very soon whether he's a dragon or a worm. First, you're wise. The 3 elders stroked their beards and praised. Yes, this bit of test might not be enough. The first elder thought for a moment, and the turbidity in his eyes had long disappeared. Instead, they shone with a crafty glint as he continued. By the way, wasn't Long Yan once engaged to that lass from the hornless dragon lineage? Now that this lad has replaced Long Yan's position, he has to accept this marriage as well. First, that lass from the hornless dragons has a fiery temper and dares to argue with anyone. Back then, she didn't agree to this marriage and almost came to our Illumination Dragon lineage to break off the engagement. It's only because Long Yan is dead that this matter might have gotten out of hand. The 4th elder said with lingering fear, if that lass finds out that not only has her fiancé changed, but he's also a dragon with an impure bloodline, she'll definitely flip our Illumination Dragon lineage upside down. Isn't that perfect? Let this lad deal with it. The 1st elder said with a smile. First, you're still the ruthless one. The lips of the 3 elders twitched as they extended their thumbs. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.